Chapter 254. In the individual competition, everyone had a good understanding of each other's spiritual power. Therefore, there wasn't much suspense in this spiritual power competition. As the champion of the individual competition, the Light of Dawn monster hunters would be the last to fight. This was one of the privileges they received. Just like the individual competition, no equipment or medicine could be used to increase the spiritual power of the participants. They could only rely on their own abilities. A total of 21 people had already surrounded the crystal pillar and stood in a circle. As the chief judge, Chen Zidian was standing on the side of the crystal pillar. Anyone who took the spiritual power test had to be under his watch, so it was impossible to cheat. Chen Zidian signaled to Qiu Yonghao, the leader of the warrior temple. He said, "Based on the ranking of the first round, we will start the spiritual power test from the lowest to the highest. Warrior temple will conduct the test." Qiu Yonghao nodded. Then, he walked up with the two powerful warriors from the warrior temple. The warrior temple was indeed the weakest among the 6 temples. However, they had the most people among the 6 temples. After all, the requirement to become a warrior was the lowest. Qiu Yonghao walked up first. He raised his right hand and pressed it on the crystal pillar. Instantly, the transparent crystal pillar started to change color. A red color appeared at the bottom of the crystal pillar. It slowly climbed up. When it reached 1/10 of the crystal pillar, the color turned orange. It continued to climb. After 1/10 of the crystal pillar, the orange color turned yellow. The speed at which the crystal pillar was climbing slowed down. Qiu Yonghao's expression became serious. Sweat appeared on his forehead. From the color, one could tell that red represented 100,000 spiritual power points. Orange represented 100,000. Entering the yellow region meant that Qiu Yonghao's spiritual power had exceeded 200,000. He was over 100 years old this year. There wouldn't be too much of an increase in age. He could only rely on his own abilities. Finally, the color of the crystal pillar stopped when it reached more than half of the yellow region. No matter how hard Qiu Yonghao tried, it wouldn't go any higher. Qiu Yonghao sighed. He stopped. A huge golden number appeared at the top of the crystal pillar. 271,364. This was Qiu Yonghao's total spiritual power. Next were the 2 powerful warriors from the warrior temple. Their cultivation level was lower than Qiu Yonghao's. They weren't domain realm masters. Both of them had an inner spiritual energy of around 200,000. In the end, including the calculation of age, the total spiritual energy of the warrior temple was 694,160. This result was really not too high. After the warrior temple was the assassin temple. The assassin temple's situation was slightly better. In the end, the total spiritual energy was 783,200. That was pretty good. The Temple of Souls had scored 58 points in the first round, which was slightly lower than the Temple of the Priests, which had scored 60 points. Therefore, they were the third to fight. With the help of Chen Hongba, the Temple Master of the Soul Temple, their total spiritual energy reached 832241, surpassing the previous 2 temples. The Temple of the Priests' score in the first round was a bit of a trick. In the second round, they didn't have an advantage. Ling Xiao and Elder Ling went up together. Together with another domain realm priest, their total spiritual energy barely reached 800,000. However, it was still slightly weaker than the Soul Temple. At this point, the rankings of the 4 temples had basically been determined. Only the Magic Temple, Knights Templars, and Light of Dawn monster hunters had not been tested yet. Everyone knew that this was the time to truly decide the victor. In the competition of the highest spiritual energy, no one was optimistic about the bright glimmer of Dawn Demon Hunt Squad. Despite having the advantage of age, their overall spiritual energy wouldn't exceed 900,000. It would depend on who would be the first, the Magic Temple or the Night Temple. The Magic Temple sent out Li Jingji, Mo Wu, and the Magic Temple's Earth Magician with the strongest defense. The Dark Magician, Mo Wu, and the Earth Magician both had close to 300,000 spiritual energy. In addition, they were not even 100 years old. After the assessment, the total spiritual energy of the Magic Temple was close to 600,000. Li Jingji was the last to go up. Inside the crystal pillar, the colorful light rose rapidly. Red, orange, yellow, green. When the light pillar finally entered the cyan area, although many people had guessed Li Jingji's cultivation, they still couldn't help but exclaim. This meant that Li Jingji's internal spiritual energy had exceeded 400,000. Finally, the light pillar stopped in the cyan area. Li Jingji's spiritual energy was more than 420,000. Together with the spiritual energy of the previous two magicians, the Magic Temple's total spiritual energy exceeded 1 million. It was 107423. Could the Knights Templars surpass the Magic Temple? Soon, the Knights Templars gave the answer. The Knight of the Seal, Long Tianin, was not among the three Knights Templars. Instead, it was Yang Haoyu who led the team. There was also the Shield of the Knights Templars and the one who entered the top 6. As soon as the three knights stood there, Li Jingji's face turned ugly. The Shield of the Strongest was the first to attack. His spiritual energy was fixed at 3221,600. The Knight of the top 6 was the second to attack. His spiritual energy was fixed at 332,800. Finally, it was Yang Haoyu's turn. He calmly walked in front of the crystal pillar. He raised his right hand and lightly slapped the crystal pillar. A shocking scene appeared. The colorful light inside the crystal pillar shot up like a geyser. Red, orange, yellow, green, and cyan flashed past and brazenly entered the blue area. The number 1 in the Temple League was not as simple as it seemed. Yang Haoyu used his own strength to defend the dignity of the Knights Templars. His inner spiritual energy was more than 568,000, far surpassing Li Jingji's 420,000. In the end, the Knights Templars surpassed the Magic Temple with a total spiritual energy of more than 1,200,000. After this round, the rankings of the two temples would definitely change. The Light of Dawn Monster Hunters was the last to attack. Chen Ying-er was the first to attack. She had an innate inner spiritual energy of 170,000. Kai-er was the second to attack. She had an innate inner spiritual energy of 190,000. At this point, many people were already sighing in their hearts. The Light of Dawn Monster Hunters were still young. In terms of spiritual energy, they really did not have any advantage. Finally, it was Long Haochen's turn to attack. It was also the only bright spot for the Light of Dawn Monster Hunters. As the light from the heart of eternity shone, Long Haochen's innate inner spiritual energy shot straight up to the 300,000 mark. It finally stopped at the 310,000 mark. After these few days of competition and enlightenment, Long Haochen's cultivation had increased again. If he did not include the additional 90,000 inner spiritual energy from the heart of eternity, his own inner spiritual energy had reached about 220,000. In the end, the three of them had a total of more than 570,000. At this time, the advantage of age showed itself. Long Haochen was 25, Kai-er was 24, and Chen Ying-er was 28. Their additional spiritual energy was as high as 233,000. In addition to their 570,000 points, their final spiritual energy was actually over 800,000. The funniest thing was, perhaps they were blessed by the god of luck. Although their total spiritual energy was inferior to that of the Soul Temple, it exceeded that of the Temple of the Priest. Moreover, their advantage was only a weak 13 points. In the end, in the competition with the highest spiritual energy, the Knights Templars won the first place without a doubt, followed by the Magic Temple, the Soul Temple, the Light of Dawn Monster Hunters, the Temple of the Priests, the Temple of Assassins, and the Warrior Temple. After this competition, the points also changed. According to the rules, the first place would get 200 points, the second would get 150 points, the third would get 120 points, the fourth would get 90 points, the fifth would get 60 points, and the last place would get no points. Because of the addition of the Light of Dawn monster hunters, the original 6 parties became 7 parties. Therefore, the sixth place would get 30 points, and the last place would still get no points. The ranking of the points was: the Light of Dawn monster hunters had 442 points, the Knights Templars had 298 points, the Magic Temple had 255 points, the Soul Temple had 178 points, the Temple of the Priests had 120 points, the Temple of Assassins had 64 points, and the Temple of the Warriors had 24 points. Although the Light of Dawn monster hunters only got the 4th place in this round, because of the huge advantage they had in the first round, they were still far ahead. Under the leadership of Yang Haoyu, the Knights Templars had overtaken the Magic Temple. The Temple of the Warriors was the worst off. They only got 24 points and were at the bottom. In the next 2 competitions, it would be difficult for them to achieve anything. Although the first 2 rounds were tense and intense, the real match that would decide the final rankings would be held tomorrow, because the 3rd round's domain competition was the one that would give the most points out of all 4 rounds. According to the rules, the first place would receive as many as 500 points. Moreover, it was no longer a 6-way competition, but with the addition of the Bright Glimmer of Dawn Demon Hunt Squad as the 7th place, it was very likely that the points would rise. In this match, it was very possible for a situation to turn the tides of the battle. After all, Long Haochen's side only had an advantage of 150 points over the Temple of Night. Therefore, as soon as today's competition ended, Long Haochen brought his teammates back to the Sanctuary Alliance's headquarters. "Is Lin Xian not back yet?" Long Haochen asked Sima Xian. Sima Xian shook his head and said, "Not yet. Before he left last night, he told me that he was going to look for his grandfather to learn magic. He hasn't appeared since then." Long Haochen nodded slightly. He could vaguely guess what Lin Xian was going to learn. As he didn't need to participate in the 2nd and 3rd rounds of the competition, Lin Xian's absence wouldn't affect the others' participation in the competition. "Captain, let me go tomorrow," Wang Yuanyuan said with a determined gaze. Chen Ying-er instantly became anxious. She said, "Yuanyuan, you can't fight with me. In the 3rd round, we are allowed to wear equipment. I have the help of the Soul Saint garment. I won't be at a disadvantage." In the 3rd round of the competition, each side would send out 3 people. All of them had to be Domain Realm Masters. In the Light of Dawn Monster Hunters, there were 4 Domain Realm Masters. Long Haochen and Kair would definitely be sent out. The 3rd spot would naturally be chosen between Wang Yuanyuan and Chen Ying. These 2 girls usually had a good relationship. However, at this moment, neither of them would give way. Long Haochen smiled and said, "Don't fight. Let me analyze it for you first. You will naturally know who is suitable to go out." The 1st and 2nd rounds of the Temple Tournament are all about individual strength. Moreover, it's purely individual strength. No equipment is allowed. This is an evaluation of the top strength of each temple. As for the next 2 rounds, it's an evaluation of the overall strength of each temple. Thus, in the last 2 rounds, we are only allowed to wear equipment. This will reflect the strength of each temple's equipment. The Magic Temple and the Knights Templars have the strongest foundation. In the 3rd round of the Domain Tournament, we only have one goal, and that is to become the final champion. Huh! Hearing Long Haochen's words, everyone couldn't help but feel a little strange. He sounded too confident. The Domain Tournament required strength to activate. Even if they had a few godly weapons, compared to the thousands of years of foundation of the 6 temples, how could they be so confident? Long Haochen continued, "The last round is the team round-robin competition. Among us monster hunters, although our equipment is not bad, it's not perfect. In particular, Wen Zhao, Duan Yi, and Brother Zhang's equipment are relatively poor. Therefore, in the team competition, we need to rely on the cooperation of various professions. I don't have absolute confidence that we can win. In the domain tournament, the rewards are the most generous, so we can't give up. The domain tournament is purely a competition of domains. At the same time, it's also a competition of domains. The first requirement is that the participating domains can't conflict with each other. They must complement each other. Relatively speaking, my light attribute and Kai Air's purification domain can complement each other, but Yuan's blood domain and Kai Air's purification domain will conflict. Although Ing Er's beast god domain can't complement us, at least it won't conflict with each other. Coupled with the enhancement of the Soul Saint garment, it's more suitable for her to fight. After hearing what Long Haochen said, Wang Yuan was instantly discouraged. Chen Ing giggled and made a funny face at her. Han Yu said, "Boss, tomorrow's domain tournament is very important. Should we practice it first?" Long Haochen shook his head and said, "There's no need. Don't worry, I'm really confident. As for where this confidence comes from, let me keep it a secret first. You'll know tomorrow." As he said this, a mysterious smile appeared on his face. It wasn't that he didn't want to say it, but if he revealed this secret, his partner's expressions would definitely change. Although his method couldn't be considered cheating, it was better not to let others see through it. Even when they set off for the Sanctuary Alliance's great trial field the next morning, Lin Xin still hadn't returned. Long Haochen didn't send anyone to look for him. Although Lin Xin's character was a little erratic at times, he was still reliable. Long Haochen believed that he would definitely return for tomorrow's team competition. After a few days of repair, all the demonic crystal fields outside the Sanctuary Alliance's great trial field had been repaired. The Sanctuary Alliance's headquarters wasn't too far from the Sanctuary Alliance's great trial field. There was a path specially made by the soldiers to allow the participating powerhouses of the 6 major temples and the Light of Dawn monster hunters to head to the great trial field for the competition. The human wall formed by the soldiers was already filled with people. As soon as they saw Long Haochen and the others, cheers sounded instantly. Light of dawn, light of dawn, light of dawn. The order of the people wasn't chaotic. Although there were many people, their cheers were so uniform. Their eyes were filled with fanaticism, and their cheers were even more enthusiastic than when they saw any of the participating powerhouses of the temple. Over the past few days, with the intentional promotion of the Knights Templars, the achievements of the Light of Dawn monster hunters had spread throughout the Holy City and to all the cities and towns in the Temple League. They had beheaded numerous demon gods, and had once turned the tide in the sacred war several times. Most importantly, they were the first demon hunt squad to defeat a demon god pillar. They had already destroyed 2 demon god pillars. Even humans who didn't understand the demons knew that the 72 demon god pillars were the foundation of the demons. The Dark Age had lasted for 6,000 years, but the demon god pillars had never been broken. Now that the Light of Dawn monster hunters had destroyed 2 of them, what did it mean? It meant hope. Feeling the cheers of the populace, every member of the Bright Glimmer of Dawn Demon Hunt Squad was filled with fervor. For the sake of the Alliance, for the sake of leading humanity out of the darkness, they had to fight bravely, they had to make themselves stronger. After stepping into the great trial field of the Sanctuary Alliance, Long Haochen nodded to his partners and walked into the field with Kair and Chen Ing. They were considered early. In the field, only the people from the Temple of Souls and the Temple of the Priests had arrived. The other major temples hadn't arrived yet. The leaders of the Temple of Souls and the Temple of the Priests were Chen Hongba and Elder Ling respectively. Long Haochen smiled and nodded to the 2 of them as a greeting. Elder Ling returned the smile, but Chen Hongba snorted. Clearly, he was still a little unconvinced that he had lost to Long Haochen. Chen Inger said angrily, "Grandpa, what are you snorting for? You are already so old. Can't you afford to lose? Chen Hongba glared at her and said, Girls can't be kept at home when they grow up. Girl, it's fine if you don't contribute to the Soul Temple, but you are helping outsiders to suppress Grandpa. Chen Inger giggled and ran to Chen Hongba's side. She hugged his arm and acted like a spoiled child. She even pulled his beard from time to time. Chen Hongba didn't know whether to laugh or cry. His expression softened and he lowered his head to whisper something in Chen Inger's ear. Chen Inger said proudly, I knew that you have a sharp tongue but a soft heart. It's obvious that you mean well, but you don't know how to express it properly. I know that Grandpa treats me the best. Chen Hongba said seriously, This is not for your own good. It is for the future of the Soul Temple. Girl, times are different now. You have grown up. Remember your responsibilities. Yes. Chen Inger stood at attention and saluted. However, when she turned around and ran back to Long Houchen's side, the playful smile on her face once again revealed her true thoughts. In any case, she had never really been afraid of Chen Hongba since she was young. Chen Hongba shook his head helplessly. No matter what, the decision had been made and couldn't be changed. It seemed that his precious granddaughter would never be able to become the leader of the Light of Dawn. It didn't take long for the participants of the other temple to arrive. The participants of the realm battle were slightly different from the day before, but not too different. However, the changes in the venue were not small. The tall crystal pillar from yesterday had disappeared and was replaced by a huge crystal ball. This crystal ball had a diameter of more than 5 meters. It was definitely a huge object in the center of the venue. There was a base at the bottom of the crystal ball. It looked like it was carved out of jade and was in the shape of a hexagram. The crystal ball itself was light blue, and there were faint, strange spiritual waves emitting from it. Long Houchen had already learned from his grandfather that this crystal ball was called the Holy Pearl. It wasn't a godly artifact, but it was better than one. The Holy Pearl was made of a special crystal that could withstand an extremely large amount of spiritual power. After being modified by a magic array, the Holy Pearl's interior was extremely stable, and it had the ability to assimilate any elemental fluctuations. To put it simply, this Holy Pearl was a godly artifact that had been solidified with the elemental decay halo. Moreover, this ability was similar to the elemental decay halo. Even the demon emperor wouldn't be able to break it from the inside with his spiritual power. Of course, the Holy Pearl's ability to withstand spiritual power also made it relatively vulnerable to physical attack. The Holy Pearl had a practical use. Under the right control, it could be used in battle, and it had the power to devour forbidden spells. It had always been controlled by the leader of the Sanctuary Alliance. However, the 6 temples were at odds with each other. Although the Holy Pearl had a good effect, it was still not allowed to be taken out of the Holy City due to its symbolic significance. It could only be used as the Holy City's ultimate defensive weapon. Long Houchen's spiritual power was far beyond that of ordinary people. He stood in front of the Holy Pearl and silently sensed the changes within it. Very soon, a look of shock appeared on his face. This was because he couldn't feel the existence of any spiritual power inside the Holy Pearl. However, once his divine sense entered it, it would be devoured by the Holy Pearl. In other words, the Holy Pearl could not only devour spiritual power, but also mental power. Even with Long Houchen's powerful mental power, he felt as if he had entered a vast and boundless ocean when he entered it. If used properly, this Holy Pearl would definitely have an unexpected and excellent effect when facing a strong enemy. It was just like when Long Houchen was targeted by the demon god Insight's spirit-inducing technique. If he had this Holy Pearl, he would have been able to break the opponent's spirit-inducing technique in an instant. Even the demon god Insight would have been severely injured due to the excessive devouring of its mental power. Just as Long Houchen was thinking about the use of the Holy Pearl, the chief referee, Chen Zidian, had already arrived. He glanced at the 21 people standing around the Holy Pearl and nodded. "Are you guys ready?" Long Houchen returned to his senses and replied respectfully along with the others, "Ready." Chen Zidian said in a deep voice, "Begin." As he spoke, he patted the holy pearl with his right hand, and a gentle light element was injected into the holy pearl. The holy pearl instantly turned pale gold and slowly rose from the base. Only then did Long Houchen realize that the base was actually not to enhance the holy pearl, but to restrict it. The moment the holy pearl rose, a terrifying devouring aura was emitted from it. Long Houchen finally understood why the holy pearl was used in a domain battle. If he didn't use his domain, the spiritual power in his body would be sucked out by the holy pearl's devouring power. This was the first time he had seen such a situation. The seemingly peaceful holy pearl was more terrifying than any of the divine weapons he had seen before. Tyrannical spiritual power fluctuations circulated in the air. Long Houchen took a step forward, forming a triangle with himself, Kai and Chen Inger. At the same time, a layer of golden brilliance was also released from his body, enveloping the three of them. Both of his palms struck forward at the same time, and the golden light of the light god's domain was instantly injected into the holy pearl. Strangely enough, when his domain entered the holy pearl, the devouring power on the front was suddenly weakened a lot, and the color of the holy pearl on his side also turned golden. The powerhouses of the 6 major temples also released their own domains and injected them into the holy pearl. For a moment, under the effect of these powerful domains, the holy pearl became colorful and gorgeous. However, Long Houchen soon felt the pressure. The pressure came from the holy pearl. The holy pearl's absorption of the domain was very strong, but the only benefit was that when the domain power was injected into the holy pearl, Long Houchen's spiritual power entered the holy pearl along with the domain. In this way, he had the ability to withdraw. In other words, when he couldn't bear the devouring power, he could control his domain to leave the holy pearl at any time. However, if he did that, it would mean that his domain battle was over. Long Tianyin had told him that once he withdrew his domain, he would have to bear the impact of the other domains in the holy pearl. He would directly leave the holy pearl's range, and it would be impossible for him to enter it again. The pressure that the holy pearl brought to Long Houchen wasn't much. His light god domain was at a very high level, and his self-control was very strong. Thus, although there was pressure from the holy pearl, it only consumed his spiritual power. The more powerful pressure came from the domain masters of the 6 major temples. At this moment, it was a chaotic battle inside the holy pearl. After their domains entered the holy pearl, they could only control them to leave at any time, but they couldn't control their domains to attack or defend inside the holy pearl. Thus, the 21 domains began to fight with each other inside the holy pearl. At this time, cooperation was very important. The 3 domains of each side didn't inject into the domain separately, but at the same time. When the domains were injected, they maintained a connection. After entering the holy pearl, this connection would continue. Kai and Chen Inger also activated their own domains. Kai-Er's purification domain almost instantly completed the integration with Long Houchen's light god domain, while Chen Inger's beast god domain surrounded the outside. The power of the soul saint garment was undoubtedly evident. At this moment, the combined domains of the 3 were like a monster inside the holy pearl. The inside was filled with the power of light and purification, while the outside was filled with tens of thousands of beasts. No matter which temple's domain attacked, it would immediately be swept away, and the impact would be quite strong. Don't forget, Long Houchen and the other 2 could use equipment now. Kai was using the Grim Reaper scythe. With the enhancement of the blade of purification, the destructive power of her purification domain would definitely increase exponentially. As for Chen Inger, the soul saint garment provided her with an almost infinite amount of spiritual power. In terms of sustained combat power, even Long Houchen with the Heart of Eternity could not compare to her. As for Long Houchen, he was fully equipped with the fine gold foundation armor and the Holy Unicorn. If it wasn't for the fact that Haoyue's ability was too overbearing and he was afraid that it would affect the integration of the three domains, he would have even summoned Haoyue. For Long Haochen, the biggest enhancement was not the Holy Unicorn or the fine gold foundation armor, but the Sun-Moon Divine Snail shield in his left hand. A soft seven-colored light was constantly released from the Sun-Moon Divine Snail shield, fully enhancing Long Haochen's light god domain. The light spiritual power in the Sun-Moon Divine Snail shield was as pure as Long Haochen's own, and it had a unique advantage in terms of defense. With its enhancement, the joint domains of Long Haochen and the other two could be said to be impregnable. The three of them had 3 artifacts, which was rare even in the 6 great temples. In a domain battle, the most important thing was not how to attack, but how to defend. The inside of the Holy Pearl was chaotic, and no one could control their own attack. Only by making their own defense as strong as possible could they last longer in the Holy Pearl and get a better ranking. In a situation where they could use their equipment, the foundation of the 6 great temples was revealed. The leader of the Knights Templars participating in this battle was none other than Long Tianyin. Beside Long Tianyin stood Yang Haoyu and the strongest Shield Knight. Long Tianyin's Throne of God was naturally a artifact, and Yang Haoyu had the enhancement from the Starry Sky Beast, so he was undoubtedly a artifact as well. The strongest Shield Knight held a huge heavy shield in his hand. The heavy shield was 3 meters tall and 2 meters wide. The terrifying tower shield emitted a dark golden luster, and within the dark golden luster, there were some 7-colored halos flashing. A artifact shield. Other than his own Sun-Moon Divine Snail shield, this was the first time Long Haochen had seen a artifact shield. There was no doubt that the 3 Knight Templars each had an artifact for this domain battle. Moreover, the reason why the Throne of God was so famous in the Temple League was not only because it was an artifact, but also because it was a set. Now, inside the Holy Orb, the seemingly most powerful domain was formed by the 3 Knight Templars. In terms of spiritual energy, they collectively had more than 1 million. In terms of equipment, they had 3 artifacts. In terms of realm, they had the strongest Knight Yang Haoyu. With these factors added together, the 3 Knight Templars were in an invincible position. Compared to their domain fusion, the other domains didn't seem as powerful. Second only to the Knights Templars was the Magic Temple. The 3 magicians all held a staff in their hand. The green staff in Li Jingji's hand also emitted a 7-colored luster. It was obviously an artifact. At the same time, the green magic robe on his body was the same. In other words, he was wearing 2 artifacts. However, his 2 assistants didn't have artifacts, but they were both wearing epic-level equipment, which was a pretty good enhancement. The strength of these 3 magicians was different from that of the 3 Knight Templars. In the beginning, after they injected their domains into the Holy Orb, they didn't have much of an advantage. However, they kept chanting their spells. Long Haochen's mental strength was strong enough. While he was controlling his own domain, he still had spare energy to feel the changes in the other joint domains. He realized that the 3 domains on the side of the Magic Temple were rapidly merging under the chanting of the 3 magicians. They became closer and closer, and there were even signs of sublimation. What a great magic sanctuary! They were using the characteristics of magic to form a domain similar to that of mixed magic. No wonder Li Jingji was so fearless. He had indeed made ample preparations for every battle. The other temple also had their own strength. However, compared to the Magic Temple and the Knights Templars, they were lacking. The Warrior Temple was still the most miserable. It had to be said that there was a reason why the Warrior Temple was at the bottom. With Qiu Yonghao as the leader, the 3 people who participated in the battle at the Warrior Temple didn't even have epic-level equipment. They even had legendary-level equipment. This was really shabby. After all, they had gathered the power of the Warrior Temple. Therefore, among the 7 merged domains, the Warrior Temple seemed the weakest. However, because Qiu Yonghao's sword domain was quite sharp, it could still be maintained for a while. Long Haochen wasn't anxious at all. With a calm smile on his face, he controlled his merged domain to a corner. As Chen Ying-er's beast god domain was on the outer layer, her consumption of spiritual power was much greater than that of Long Haochen and Kai. However, she had the soul saint garment, so there wouldn't be any problems in a short period of time. At the same time, with Chen Ying-er's protection, Long Haochen and Kai-er's consumption of spiritual power was reduced to the lowest level. Chen Hongbo and his two companions were also helpless as they maintained their merged domains. From time to time, they would look at Chen Ying-er and feel bitter. If this girl was on his side with the Soul Saint garment, Chen Hongbo would definitely have the confidence to fight against the Knights Templars and the Magic Temple. His Beast King domain could easily merge with the other two summoners' domains. If Chen Ying-er's Beast God domain and Soul Saint garment were added, he could even use the stampede of beasts inside the Holy Pearl to fight against the Knights Templars and the Magic Temple. However, the only word that could be used to describe it now was the word miserable. The dignified Soul Temple also didn't have a godly weapon guarding it. It could only defend itself and try its best to hold on for as long as possible. Time passed by minute by minute. It had to be said that the 21 domain masters present were all very knowledgeable. In the blink of an eye, 2 hours had passed. Although their expressions were serious, it seemed that none of them were showing any signs of being unable to hold on. Chen Zidian stood at the side and silently watched this battle of domains. The Holy Pearl was indeed strange. With his strength, he didn't dare to easily try to insert his domain into it, especially now that there were 21 domain masters inside the Holy Pearl. However, his spiritual power was also quite strong, so he could more or less feel the 7 domains clashing inside the Holy Pearl. Another 2 hours passed by. At that moment it was already close to noon. At this time, the advantages and disadvantages could be seen. The most obvious side would always be the weakest side. At that moment, the foreheads of the 3 warrior temple masters were already covered in sweat. Their merged domains inside the Holy Pearl would shake violently every time it collided with another domain. It was obvious that they wouldn't be able to hold on for much longer. In this battle of domains, no one dared to force themselves too much. The reason was very simple. If one was not careful and their domain was broken inside the Holy Pearl, then their vitality would be greatly damaged. Chapter 255. When 4 hours had passed, Qiu Songran finally let out a long sigh and retracted his hand along with his other 2 companions. A powerful force surged out of the Saint Orb and pushed their bodies all the way to the edge of the great trial field before stopping. This also meant that the warrior temple was once again at the bottom. Until now, the warrior temple's total points had not exceeded 30. Qiu Yonghao's expression was so ugly that it looked like blood was about to drip out. He didn't stay to continue watching the battles. He turned around and walked out of the great trial field. He walked up to the stand and sulked. With one less side competing, the clashing of the domains in the Saint Orb didn't decrease. Instead, it became even more intense. Especially after the Mage Temple's domain started to merge, its power became stronger and stronger. Wind, darkness, and earth, the 3 major elements merged together, making their domain look like magic. The domain had the effect of stacking and amplification. It didn't look any weaker than the Knights Templars' domain. It was also because their performance became stronger and stronger that the Warrior Temple was eliminated early. The Assassin Temple and Soul Temple also started to be in danger. No matter if they clashed with the Knights Templars' domain or the Mage Temple's domain, they would be shaken violently. The Light of Dawn situation was still better. The 3 of them had been stabilizing their domain. Under Long Haochen's guidance, they didn't want to make any mistakes. Chen Ying-er was also exhausted, but her situation was relatively better. After the Warrior Temple, the Temple of the Priests was in the most danger. The temple of the priests weren't good at attacking or defending. Although the three domain masters led by Elder Ling had completed the merging of their domains well, they couldn't effectively counterattack every time they were attacked. Naturally, their exhaustion was faster than the other temple masters. At that moment, the three priests' expressions were very ugly. They could also be eliminated at any time. At noon, Long Houchen, who had been silent all this time, suddenly raised his head. His eyes became exceptionally bright. The moment he raised his head, he attracted the attention of Yang Haoyu and Li Jingji. Among everyone present, the two of them had the strongest spiritual power cultivation, so they paid the most attention to Long Houchen. Yang Haoyu was slightly taken aback when he saw Long Houchen's sparkling eyes. Li Jingji's heart skipped a beat. They both felt that something was about to happen. As expected, in the next moment, Long Houchen's actions shocked all the domain realm masters present. Even Chen Zidian almost exclaimed in surprise. A layer of misty golden light erupted from the combined domain of Long Houchen and the other two. This layer of golden light was none other than Long Houchen's light god domain. On the outer layer of this golden light there was a layer of solid white. Was he crazy? The 7 factions were competing in terms of domains. Each faction had a stable fusion of their 3 domains. They would defend one domain and try their best to avoid using too much energy. At that moment, Long Houchen actually expanded his domain in the holy bead. Although it seemed that his domain had merged with Kai Er's domain, this way, his domain would definitely become the target of everyone. It would be attacked by all the other temples and might very well be eliminated in the next moment. However, a shocking scene appeared. When the 5 sacred halls' fusion domains came in contact with the golden white light, they were all bounced back. There was an extremely unique spiritual energy ripple contained within the golden white light. It seemed to be a supreme existence. Any domain that came in contact with it would be like snow coming in contact with a red-hot iron, showing signs of melting. It was so much so that the experts of the 5 sacred halls had no choice but to retract their domains in order to avoid coming in contact with an even stronger power. They also merged their domain? Li Jingji was shocked. He also didn't expect that after Long Houchen and Kai Er's domains merged, the power would actually be so strong. In fact, in the entire Light of Dawn Monster Hunters, the real trump card was the domain fusion between Long Houchen and Kai. This increase in power was only known to the people in the Light of Dawn Monster Hunters. Both Long Houchen and Kai Er's domains were extremely high-level existences. Long Houchen's light god domain was unparalleled in terms of purity. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that it was the best domain in the entire Holy Demon continent. On the other hand, Kai Er's purification domain purified all negative forces, especially the aura of darkness and the undead. When the purest radiant god domain met the purification domain with the purest radiant god domain with the most purifying power, a miraculous change occurred. The extreme purity of the radiant god domain received the affection of the purifying power, and the fusion of the two was like the love between Long Houchen and Kai without any barrier. After the two fused, the domain became the radiant god purification domain, and no matter what domain it faced, its terrifying purifying power would be amplified by the light, reaching an astonishing level, to the extent that in that instant it actually suppressed the impact of the fusion domains of the other 5 sacred halls. Of course, in this state of fusion, the spiritual power consumption of Long Houchen and Kai would double. The stronger the impact of the other domains, the greater their consumption. After a short period of shock, Li Jingji couldn't help but frown. Although he didn't have much contact with Long Houchen, he had a good understanding of Long Houchen's character. Based on his understanding of Long Houchen, this young man might be young, but in fact, he was far calmer than his peers. He wouldn't do anything without a goal. He suddenly expanded his domain in a comprehensive manner, so he definitely had to do something. But what exactly was he going to do? If he expanded his domain like this, it would be easy to expand, but it would be difficult to take it back. In the process of taking back the domain, the consumption would probably be too much for them to bear. Very quickly, Long Houchen gave everyone the answer. After the light god purification domain shook away the other domains, the white that belonged to the purification suddenly disappeared. In other words, only Long Houchen's light god domain was left there. This way, if Long Houchen encountered another impact, he would have to fight against more than 10 domain realm masters by himself. However, at this moment a shocking scene occurred. The golden light suddenly disappeared. Long Houchen actually forcefully controlled his light god domain. In a situation where the others couldn't control it in the Saint Orb, he actually succeeded. His light god domain was compressed like a golden rope, and it lightly wrapped around the combined domains of the Temple of the Priests, who could be eliminated at any time. Then, a miraculous scene appeared. The moment the two domains came into contact, the 3 domain realm masters of the Temple of the Priests' bodies trembled at the same time. Then, a look of disbelief appeared on their faces. In the next moment, the 3 domain realm masters' bodies actually moved horizontally uncontrollably. In the blink of an eye, they were next to Long Houchen and the other 2. The combined domains of the 3 priests were also compressed in an instant, and were easily enveloped by Long Houchen's light god domain. Seeing this scene, even the 3 powerful Knight of the Knights Templars were filled with disbelief. Who would have thought that in this battle of domains, Long Houchen would actually do such a shocking thing? He actually used his own domain to forcefully fuse the domains of the 3 domain realm masters of the Temple of the Priests into his own domain. This way, their domain would become a fusion of 6 people. Although the domains of the Knights Templars and the Magic Temple were strong, no matter how strong they were still only 3 people. After Long Houchen and the other 2 had fused the domains of the 3 priests, the power of their domains instantly increased, completely surpassing the domains of the Knights Templars and the Magic Temple. After a short moment of shock, the 3 priests immediately understood. Under the protection of Long Houchen's light god domain, their consumption of energy was greatly reduced. Moreover, with the light god domain enveloping them, their domains were going through a more perfect fusion. In fact, the 3 priests could clearly feel that after their domains were affected by the light god domain, they actually became purer and purer. This was a huge surprise for them. Only now did they know that Long Houchen's domain was actually this strong. Perhaps his cultivation of the domain was not strong enough, but the level of the domain was probably the highest in the alliance. The 3 priests quickly calmed their emotions. Elder Ling even revealed a faint smile on his face. He faintly guessed that this was Long Houchen returning the favor. Back then, he had given him the right to enter the Dream Temple, and this young man was now returning the favor. In the temple tournament, the domain battle had been held for so many times, but there had never been a situation where the domains of 2 temple masters had joined forces. It was not that they were unwilling, but that they could not. Long Houchen's actions seemed simple, but in reality, even Yang Haoyu, the number 1 powerhouse in the alliance, could not replicate it. It was just too difficult to control the domain within the Saint Orb. The reason why Long Houchen could do it was because he had the assistance of Kai Er's purification domain. Another reason was that the level of his domain was high enough, and his spiritual power was strong enough. Even so, he had to first release the domain to a large enough extent before shrinking it. There was an element of trickery involved. When shrinking, he only needed to maintain contact with the Temple of the Priests, and shrink in other directions. Relatively speaking, it was much easier to control, but even so, it was not something that the domains of the other temple masters could do. Moreover, there was another more important point. Long Houchen's God of Light domain could instantly complete the convergence and fusion of the domains of the Temple of the Priests. In front of the God of Light domain, the gentle domain of the priests did not resist at all. Even the three powerhouses from the Temple of the Priests were pulled to the side of Long Houchen and the others. It could be seen how effective the domain was. It was with these 2 points that Long Houchen succeeded in fusing the 3 domains of the Temple of the Priest. The smile on Elder Ling's face became wider and wider. After fusing with Long Houchen's domain, not only did it make the domains of the 3 of them more pure, it was also very beneficial to their future cultivation. Moreover, the fusion of the domains of the 6 of them made them the most powerful and invincible party. If this continued, even if the Temple of the Priests would be eliminated earlier than the light of dawn, they would probably be better than the Knights Templars and the Magic Temple. It could be said that they had made a huge profit. They were originally going to be eliminated. This was Long Houchen's trump card. After Long Tianyin explained the process of the domain competition in the Holy Pearl, Long Houchen had this idea. His God of Light domain had the power to command all light spiritual power. In this domain competition, although the powerhouses of the 6 temples were inferior, the gap would not be too big. As long as he could pull one party to fuse with the domain, he would definitely be able to stand until the end. The Light of Dawn originally had the strength of the top 3 in this domain competition. Even if they fought head-on, they might not lose to the Knights Templars and the Magic Temple. However, with the addition of the Temple of the Priests, they would have a huge advantage. Long Houchen actually had a lot of choices. He could also choose from the Warrior Temple. After all, Qiu Yonghao was also of the light attribute. However, the spiritual power of the 3 people in the Warrior Temple was not the same. He still needed to peel off Qiu Yonghao's domain, which was more troublesome. The situation in the Holy Pearl was chaotic, and Long Houchen really did not have that much energy. Therefore, he had no choice but to give up. The next 2 choices were the Knights Templars and the Temple of the Priests. The 3 powerhouses of the Knights Templars were also of the light attribute, and they had the closest relationship with Long Houchen. However, it should not be forgotten that the 3 of them were also quite powerful. Long Tianyin had the Throne of God's enhancement, and Yang Haoyu had the Starry Sky domain. It would not be easy for Long Houchen to conquer them with his God of Light domain. Moreover, it would easily arouse the dissatisfaction of the other temples. Therefore, Long Houchen finally decided to target the Temple of the Priests. The domains of the 3 priests of the Temple of the Priests were relatively gentler, and they had the least rejection to his God of Light domain. Moreover, the Temple of the Priests was already very weak among the 6 temples. Pulling them to his side would not affect the competition between the Knights Templars and the Magic Temple. Long Houchen's timing was also very clever. It was at the critical moment when the Temple of the Priests was about to be eliminated. This way, the Temple of the Priests would be more receptive to his domain, and thus avoid the predicament of the 3 priests voluntarily withdrawing from the competition. Without a doubt, Long Houchen succeeded. When he saw the knowing smile on Elder Ling's face, he was relieved and continued to stabilize his domain. With the help of his God of Light domain, the domains of the 3 priests were all stabilized, and the outcome was set. Long Tianyin stared at Long Houchen gloomily. He thought to himself, this brat actually had this kind of method to let the Temple of the Priests take advantage of him. Even if he couldn't integrate Brother Yang's domain, he could have discussed it with us in advance and let Brother Yang withdraw from the competition. However, his gloominess only lasted for a short period of time before he returned to normal. In his heart, he could not help but laugh. If his grandson really did that, it would probably incite the collective dissatisfaction of the other 5 holy temples. This little fellow was really smart. Without any suspense, the domain battle continued. After an hour, the Assassin Temple and the Soul Temple withdrew from the competition, one after another. The Knights Templars, the Magic Temple, Long Houchen, and the Temple of the Priests united to form a tripartite confrontation. At this time, the 3 sides naturally did not give way to each other. Long Houchen calmly controlled the joint domain to defend. He was not anxious at all. Whether it was the Knights Templars or the Magic Temple, whichever side collided with their domains would be greatly consumed. However, in his heart, he was still biased. When the Knights Templars collided with the domain, because everyone was of the light attribute, the consumption was less than the Magic Temple's fusion magic. Long Houchen and Kai Er's fusion domain appeared from time to time. Every time the power of the Light God's purification attacked, it could effectively consume the strength of the two temples. The three powerhouses of the Temple of the Priests even opened up their own domains for Long Houchen to command, becoming his strongest support. Under such circumstances, there was no longer any suspense about the outcome. When the sky gradually darkened and the sun set, the fusion domain of the three powerhouses of the Magic Temple was finally squeezed out of the Holy Pearl. The Magic Temple had already lost. There was no reason for the Knights Templars to continue. Since they could not win against Long Houchen and the others, the three Knight Templars simply gave up. Then, it was time for Long Houchen and the other two to separate from the Temple of the Priest. The three domain masters of the Temple of the Priests did not hesitate to give up under the leadership of Elder Ling. Long Houchen, Kair and Chen Ing-er were the last to leave the Holy Pearl. After the competition ended, it was time to announce the result. The master of the warrior temple, Chiu Yonghao, returned to the arena. His expression was still very ugly. 24 points. This was the lowest score in all the competitions. The chief referee, Chen Zidian, announced in a deep voice, "The temple's domain battle has ended. First place, Light of Dawn. Second place, Temple of the Priest. Third place, Knights Templars. Fourth place, Magic Temple. Fifth place, Soul Temple. Sixth place, Assassin Temple. Seventh place, Warrior Temple." Due to the addition of the Light of Dawn monster hunters, after discussion by the judges, the points for the first place will be increased to 600. The points for the next 5 will be reduced by 100. The last place will have no points. The points are as follows: Light of Dawn Monster Hunters, 1,042 points. Knights Templars, 698 points. Temple of the Priests, 620 points. Magic Temple, 555 points. Soul Temple, 378 points. Assassin Temple, 164 points. Warrior Temple, 24 points. Putting aside the fact that the Light of Dawn Monster Hunters had widened the gap between them, the Temple of the Priests could be said to be the biggest winner after the Light of Dawn. They had actually surpassed the Magic Temple in one fell swoop and ranked third. This was a grand occasion that had never happened since the beginning of the Temple's tournament. For a moment, both the Master of the Temple of the Priests, Ling Xiao, and Elder Ling were all smiles. They looked at Long Houchen with kindness. After Chen Zidian announced the points, he continued, "Tomorrow will be the last round of the Temple's tournament. Due to the large number of participants and the fact that equipment can be used, the competition will be held in the air." The single competition had almost torn down the Sanctuary Alliance's great trial field, let alone the team competition. It was a 10 versus 10 competition with no restrictions on equipment. With a few artifacts and the activation of all the rank 9 powerhouses present, not to mention the Sanctuary Alliance's great trial field, even the sacred city might be torn down by them. Therefore, it was the safest to hold the team competition in the air. Moreover, it had to be high up in the sky and far away from the sacred city. Chief Referee. At this moment, the master of the Soul Temple, Chen Hongba, stepped forward and bowed to Chen Zidian. Chen Zidian looked at Chen Hongba, who had the same surname as him, and said, "Hongba, what do you think?" Chen Hongba was a little unconvinced and said, "Chief Referee, you saw the process of the territory competition just now. I think that the Light of Dawn monster hunters cheated. They won through tricks." Seeing that the Temple of the Priests had suppressed them, Chen Hongba became stubborn again. Chen Zidian smiled and said, "Is that really the case? Alright, let's ask the other temple participants what they think. Tianyin, you go first." He turned his gaze to Long Tianyin. Long Tianyin smiled indifferently and said, I didn't see Long Haochen cheated in the competition. Although we lost wholeheartedly. That's right, I'm his grandfather, but I still have to say this. First, let me ask everyone, even if you know this method, can you do it? I don't think I can do it. Long Haochen's strong control over the territory allowed him to do whatever he wanted in the Sacred Pearl. He was able to absorb, control, and pull the 3 territories of the Temple of the Priests in an instant. This is the embodiment of his absolute strength. Let me ask you again, if the same situation happened to the other temple participants, what would you choose? Would you team up with the Light of Dawn to eliminate the other competitors first? After hearing Long Tianyin's words, Elder Ling smiled and said, Tianyin is right. Let's not talk about how Long Haochen did it. No one would refuse such a good thing. We have benefited from the Light of Dawn this time. The Assassin Temple's temple master Xing Yu smiled indifferently and glanced at Chen Hongbo. He said disdainfully, If you can't do it, then you can't do it. Why are you blaming your parents? How uncultured. What did you say? Chen Hongbo flew into a rage and glared at Xing Yu. These two didn't get along with each other. In addition, the Soul Temple and the Assassin Temple had always been competitors in the temple tournament. Chen Hongbo could be said to have ignited the fire. Xing Yu didn't give in. He said, What? You're not convinced? Let's fight one-on-one? Enough. Chen Zidian shouted in a low voice. An invisible majestic aura instantly spread out. Legendary Almighty wasn't just for show. Yonghao, what about you? Chen Zidian turned his gaze to Qiu Yonghao. Now, 3 out of the 6 major temples had expressed their support for the Light of Dawn. Qiu Yonghao smiled bitterly and said, We were already eliminated at that time. We didn't know the specific situation in the Sacred Pearl. The Warrior Temple forfeited. As the best partner of the Magic Temple, Qiu Yonghao couldn't openly support the Light of Dawn monster hunters at this time. However, he had his own thoughts. For the future of the Warrior Temple, he had to prepare for a rainy day. First, he couldn't offend the Light of Dawn monster hunters. He didn't expect the Light of Dawn monster hunters to be so powerful. After 3 rounds, they led the group with more than 1,000 points. Whether it was the Knights Templars or the Magic Temple, it was too difficult to turn the tables in the last round. Long Haochen's powerful purple-gold Haoyue sword and the artifacts displayed by the 3 contestants today all showed the deep foundation of the Light of Dawn monster hunters. Chen Zidian nodded. Out of the 6 major temples, 3 supported and 1 forfeited. He didn't even need to ask the Magic Temple to come up with a conclusion. However, out of respect for the Magic Temple, Chen Zidian still looked at Li Jingji inquiringly. Li Jingji's expression was very calm. It seemed that he was no longer depressed about the Magic Temple's 4th place in the realm battle. Chief Judge, everyone, first of all, I support what everyone said just now. Although the Light of Dawn had some tricks in the realm battle, it was also due to their strength. Without the special characteristics of Long Haochen's Light God realm, he wouldn't have been able to do it. Even if they didn't join forces with the Temple of the Priests, they would still have a high chance of winning in the end. Therefore, I think there's no need to be entangled in this matter anymore. Long Tianyin couldn't help but be surprised that Li Jingji let go of the opportunity to criticize the Light of Dawn so easily. Also, I have a suggestion, Li Jingji continued. At this point in the competition, the rankings basically won't change much. I think there's no need to continue the last team battle. There are many people in the team battle, and they can use equipment. It's very likely that there will be accidental injuries. I think this year's temple tournament should be based on the current rankings. We can give up on the last round. Although the temple tournament is a major event in the Temple League that happens once every 10 years, it will also receive the attention of the demons. All of you are the top powerhouses of your temple, so we should save as much time as possible. Therefore, I think it's more important for us to prepare for the new alliance so that we can counterattack the demons in the future. Hearing Li Jingji's words, everyone was more than just surprised. Li Jingji's words implied that the Magic Temple had given up on competing in this year's temple tournament. Li Jingji was able to withdraw as he pleased. Even Long Tianyin, who had never liked Li Jingji, couldn't help but nod inwardly. No matter what, Li Jingji still knew how to prioritize the overall situation. Chen Zidian nodded slightly and said, "The temple tournament is a major event in the Magic Alliance that happens once every 10 years. Reducing the number of matches must be agreed upon by all temple members. Everyone, let's vote by a show of hands. Those who agree to end the tournament early, please raise your hands." Li Jingji was the first to raise his hand calmly, followed by the Knights Templars and the Light of Dawn Monster Hunters. To them, ending the temple tournament with the current situation was exactly what they wanted to see the most. The warrior temple master, Qiu Yonghao, glanced at Li Jingji and raised his hand as well. He couldn't help but admire Li Jingji greatly. This is what it means to be flexible. Xing Yu also raised his hand. He looked at Long Haochen and Kair on the opposite side and was filled with gratification. He had been waiting for the day when these two young people stood at the peak of humanity. On the side of the Temple of the Priests, Ling Xiao and Elder Ling naturally raised their hands without hesitation. They were currently in third place, and the Temple of the Priests had an unprecedented good result in the temple tournament. If there was anyone who was most willing to end the tournament now, it would be them. At this time, the only ones who didn't raise their hands were the Soul Temple. Everyone's eyes were focused on Chen Hongbo. Although Chen Hongbo was a stubborn old man, he was more calculative than anyone else. Although he was more or less unwilling to end the Soul Temple in fifth place, for the sake of the Soul Temple's position in the new Magic Alliance, he slowly raised his hand. As he raised his hand, Chen Hongbo purposely lowered his voice so that Xing Yu could hear him and said, "At least it's a little higher than some people's points. It's not bad." This time, Xing Yu did not pay any attention to him. He wore a smile on his face and looked unperturbed. Seeing that everyone had agreed to Li Jingji's suggestion, Chen Zidian nodded and said, "All right, if that's the case, I, the Chief Judge, hereby announce the end of the temple tournament. The rankings are as follows. Light of Dawn Monster Hunters in first place, Knights Templars in second place, Temple of the Priests in third place, Magic Temple in fourth place, Soul Temple in fifth place, Assassin Temple in sixth place, and Warrior Temple in seventh place. Tomorrow, the representatives of the 6 temples and the Monster Hunters will hold a meeting at the headquarters of the Sanctuary Alliance to discuss matters related to the new Magic Alliance." "Yes." Everyone bowed to Chen Zidian at the same time. It had to be said that there was no better person than this legendary figure to be the chief judge of the temple tournament. After 3 rounds, the temple tournament ended early. It could be said that this was another accident. In the eyes of future generations, this year's temple tournament had drawn a perfect end to the history of the Temple League. Li Jingji revealed a faint smile on his face. He slowly walked in front of Long Haochen and took the initiative to extend his hand and said, "Congratulations, Long Haochen." Long Haochen said sincerely, "Thank you. Don't worry, I won't let you down." Li Jingji smiled and said, "I'll be waiting to see the day you wear the throne of God." His congratulation to Long Haochen meant that Li Jingji had given up the competition for the leadership of the new Magic Alliance. Without the biggest competitor, everything would be much easier. Long Haochen nodded and said, "Definitely." Long Tianyin came to Li Jingji's side and patted his shoulder. He smiled and said, "It will be the world of the young in the future. I always thought that you were very young, but now you are old." Li Jingji snorted and said, "Old Long, although you are not very capable, you have a good son and a good grandson." Hearing his sarcasm, Long Tianyin was not angry. He laughed and said, "It's all because of my good inheritance." Chen Hongbo snorted and said, "Good inheritance? I don't see how much he resembles you. He is much better looking than you. Don't flatter yourself." Long Tianyin smiled and said, You can say whatever you want. This old man is in a good mood today. I'll just take it that you are jealous." The leaders of the other temples were indeed jealous. They were jealous that Long Tianyin had such a good grandson. With the ability that Long Haochen had shown, the new magic alliance and the next 100 years would probably be dominated by the Knights Templars. If humans could defeat the demons in the end, then this position would be even more solid. It could be said that the existence of Long Haochen had fully established the ruling position of the Knights Templars in the future magic alliance. Long Haochen bowed to the leaders of the 6 temples one by one. He humbly said that he was able to become the champion because of luck. Although the temple competition was over, it was only the beginning for the Temple League. The more important matters were still to come. Before the temple competition began, the 6 temples had already finished negotiating. The changes to the Temple League could not be delayed. After 6,000 years of accumulation, the gap between the Temple League and the Mo tribe was no longer so large. But why was it that after the Holy War began, they could only passively take a beating? The gap in strength was one thing, but was the gap between the Temple League and the demons really that big? The answer was no. The reason why the Temple League was so passive was because they each had their own way of doing things. The monster hunters had proven the usefulness of the multi-profession combination time and time again. But even now, when the war began, the profession combination still could not be completed. The key was the estrangement between the 6 temples themselves. To solve this problem was not something that could be easily done. The most important thing was the reform of the Magic Alliance. That's right, the 6 temples each had their own selfish motive. No one wanted their land to be managed by others. However, there was an important factor that caused everyone to compromise in the end. That was the huge threat from the demons. The Holy War more than 4 years ago made the Temple League fully aware of the strength of the demons. Before that Holy War, the 6 temples had always believed that even if the Magic Alliance's attack was insufficient, their defense was still more than enough. But in reality, even if the demons did not launch an all-out attack, and the most powerful races did not participate in the war, it was still very difficult for them to resist the demons' attack. Not only did they suffer heavy losses, but they also almost lost a few of their major strongholds. Among them, the Temple of Assassins, the Temple of Warriors, and the Temple of the Priests experienced the most. These 3 temples had all been attacked by the demons and almost lost. Therefore, after the Holy War ended, the 6 temples gradually reached a consensus on the establishment of a new magic alliance after many meetings. In order to fight against the demons and for the continuation of humanity, they could no longer be selfish. No matter how the power of humanity was divided in the future, the first thing they had to do was to let humanity continue to exist. Otherwise, if humanity perished, what power would they have? What selfishness? However, the problem of who should lead the new Magic Alliance was discussed for a long time. In the end, this year's temple tournament became an important watershed for the division of power. Everything was decided by strength. If it weren't for the sudden participation of the Light of Dawn monster hunters, perhaps the battle between the Knights Templars and the Magic Temple would have lasted until the last moment. The reason why Li Jingji chose to give up was not only because of the strong performance of the Light of Dawn monster hunters, but also because of the strength of the Knights Templars. He initially thought that the Magic Temple would be able to suppress the Knights Templars in all aspects. However, when the actual temple tournament began, the Knights Templars suppressed the Magic Temple even though the 2 Knight of the Seal did not participate. This was a huge blow to Li Jingji. He did not expect this to happen. However, there was no doubt that it was meaningless to persist. No matter what, the Knights Templars would not let the Magic Temple become the dominant force. Although the leader of the Light of Dawn monster hunters was Long Haochen, they were, after all, a team of monster hunters consisting of powerhouses with 6 attributes. It was better for these young people to become the future leaders of the new Magic Alliance than for any temple to be the leader. This was also an important reason why Chen Zidian insisted on asking Long Haochen and the others to come back and fight for power. The appearance of the Light of Dawn monster hunters might seem abrupt, but on a deeper level, they could receive support from all sides. On the contrary, they were the least likely to have dispute. Chapter 256. After returning to the headquarters of the Sanctuary Alliance, the preparations for the establishment of the new alliance had already begun. The meeting for the establishment of the new alliance would begin the next day. As for how long it would last, it would depend on how long the 6 major temples needed to reach a consensus. Long Haochen didn't rest after returning to the headquarters with his companions. Instead, they held a meeting and only ended it in the evening. Just as Long Haochen had expected, Brother Yu Yao was reliable. Just as their meeting ended, Lin Xian returned. Brother Yu Yao, why are you only back now? Our meeting is over. Also, the temple competition ended early, Chen Ying'er said to Lin Xian. Lin Xian had a rare serious expression on his face as he replied, I already know, leader. I've been learning the Holy Sun incantation from my grandfather these few days, so Long Haochen nodded and said, We're all brothers. You don't have to explain anything. Take a seat and I'll tell you what we discussed just now. Let's see if you have any suggestions. Lin Xian agreed and sat opposite Long Haochen. He said, Leader, before you speak, I have something to report to you. Before I came back, Temple Master Li Jingji looked for me and asked me to pass a message to you. He said that during the election for the new alliance, if the Light of Dawn can maintain that only one person from each profession is selected, he will give us his full support. After listening to his words, Long Haochen couldn't help but smile. He said, Temple Master Li Jingji and I have the same thoughts. The establishment of the new alliance will change many things. It can be said that in certain aspects, it will affect the interests of the 6 major temples. If we don't want any problems to arise, we must first achieve balance. Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. The night passed uneventfully. The next morning, in the conference room of the headquarters of the Sanctuary Alliance, the higher-ups representing the 6 major temples and the powerhouses representing the monster hunters had all arrived. According to the previous agreement, 36 people from each of the 6 major temples had come to participate in the meeting. They were the 36 people who had participated in the temple competition. As for the monster hunters, apart from the legendary Chen Zidian and the Light of Dawn monster hunters, there were also more than 20 representatives of the king level and above monster hunters, making up the 36 people. In other words, there were a total of 252 people participating in this grand meeting. There were less than 10 people who could sit on the rostrum. From left to right they were Qiu Yonghao, the temple master of the warrior temple, Sheng Yu, the temple master of the assassin temple, Li Jingji, the temple master of the magic temple, Chen Zidian, the legendary Chen Zidian, Long Haochen, the leader of the Light of Dawn monster hunters, Yang Haohan, the temple master of the Knights Templars, Chun Hongba, the temple master of the Soul Temple, and Ling Xiao, the temple master of the Temple of the Priests. From the seats, it was obvious that Long Haochen had led the Light of Dawn monster hunters to win the championship in the temple competition. If it weren't for such an outstanding result, with his previous status in the alliance, unless the Knights Templars promoted him to the new temple master, he definitely wouldn't be qualified to sit on the rostrum. The person presiding over the meeting was the previous leader of the Temple League, the temple master of the Knights Templars, the owner of the throne of God of Protection and Mercy, and the Knight of the Seal of the Knights Templars, Yang Haohan. Since everyone is here, let's start the meeting. Yang Haohan's calm voice resounded in the venue. There was no need for any amplification equipment at all. His voice could be clearly heard by everyone. First of all, I would like to congratulate the Light of Dawn monster hunters for winning the championship in the temple competition that has just ended. As he spoke, Yang Haohan took the lead to applaud. The powerhouses of the 6 major temples and the representatives of the monster hunters immediately followed suit. The large conference room was filled with enthusiastic applause. It wasn't to flatter Long Houchen and the others, but it was out of admiration from the bottom of their hearts. Long Houchen stood up and hit his left chest with his right fist. He gave a standard knight's salute to everyone in the meeting, and then he bowed again to Yang Houhen to express his gratitude. Yang Houhen said, "In order to reflect the fairness of this meeting, be it the 6 major temples or the monster hunters, each party will have a total of 36 participants, including everyone on the rostrum. After many discussions, the 6 major temples under our alliance have finally come to a consensus and decided to form a new alliance to better integrate the strength of the 6 major temples to fight against the demons. Now I will ask again. Is there anyone who disagrees with the establishment of the new alliance? If there is, please raise your hand." Yang Houhen's dignified gaze swept across the room. When he saw that no one raised their hand, he continued, "All right, since there is no objection, let us begin the discussion of the new alliance. Next, I will explain how the new alliance will be established and its composition. Since the establishment of our Temple Alliance, it has been more than 6,000 years of history. During these 6,000 years, we have continuously accumulated our strength to fight against the demons and finally gained a firm foothold. However, just when we thought that we could protect ourselves and even had the strength to fight back against the demons gave us a head-on blow. I believe that everyone remembers the Holy War 4 years ago very clearly. In this Holy War, the Alliance suffered heavy losses. A large number of powerhouses perished in the war. However, the Demon Emperor did not lead the 3 strongest races of the demons to participate in the war. Otherwise, that holy war might very well lead to the destruction of the Alliance and the destruction of all life. Because of this, we have come to realize that a loosely structured alliance is not enough to fight against the demons. If we cannot bring out the advantages of our various combat professions, we will never be able to gain the upper hand against the demons. Therefore, the 6 great temples have come to a consensus and decided to form a new alliance. In the fight against the demons, the alliance needs a unified voice. We must fully integrate, centralize, and highly centralize the power of the alliance, just like a country, so that the powerhouses of the 6 great temples can cooperate with each other like monster hunters and maximize their combat strength. Therefore, we have decided that the new alliance will be renamed as the Temple Federation. The 6 great temples will be in charge of the central government instead of the 6 great temples ruling separately. The Federation will have 1 chairman, 6 vice-chairmen, and a Federation Parliament with 36 permanent members. On some major issues, the Federation Parliament will vote. Each vice-chairman will have 2 votes, and the chairman will have 5 votes. At the same time, the chairman will have 1 veto vote. If the 6 vice-chairmen come to a consensus, or if more than 80% of the Parliament agrees, they can impeach the chairman for his mistake. Changing the alliance to the Federation, as well as all these new rules, were all decided upon after countless discussions between the 6 temples. In order to be as fair as possible and to restrain the excessive power of the central government, the higher-ups of the 6 great temples had racked their brains and finally came to a consensus. The reason why this year's grand tournament of the Temple of Saints was so important was because of the candidate for the chairman. According to the results of the previous discussions between the 6 sacred halls, whichever sacred hall emerged as the champion of the grand tournament of the Temple of Saints, the Alliance Master would be chosen by that sacred hall. This was also the reason why the Temple of Knights had even invited their strongest knight, Yang Haoyu, who had always been in seclusion. After the establishment of the new federation, the authority of the federation chairman was extremely great. Although it could not be compared to the emperor who had a monarchy system, its words still carried enormous weight. At critical moments, it could even use a veto vote. Moreover, whichever temple the Federation chairman belonged to would definitely be beneficial to the temple. Therefore, the competition between the various parties was so intense. Those who have objections to the establishment of the new federation, please raise your hand, said Yang Haohan in a deep voice. For the sake of the new federation, the conference had been held for 5 years. If there was no consensus, it would not have come to this. At this time, Yang Haohan's inquiry was just a formality. As expected, it was unanimously approved. Yang Haohan nodded and said, "All right, next, we will nominate and vote for the candidates for the chairman and vice-chairman. The chairman candidate is Long Haochen, the leader of the Light of Dawn Monster Hunters. The vice-chairman candidate is Long Tianyin, the leader of the Knights Templars, the leader of the Temple of Assassins, the leader of the Temple of Assassins, and the leader of the Temple of Magic. In this year's temple competition, he led the Light of Dawn Monster Hunters to win the championship and was nominated as a candidate for the chairman. Those who have any objections, please raise your hand." Everyone should be more familiar with the 6 temple masters. Now, let me briefly introduce the chairman candidate, Long Haochen. Long Haochen, male, age 25, occupation: Discipline and Defense Dual Knight, leader of the Light of Dawn Monster Hunters, inborn full spiritual power, son of light constitution, level 9, level 2 Holy Knight, has obtained the qualifications to be recognized by the Throne of God. Long Haochen was the champion of the Monster Hunters selection competition and formed the Light of Dawn Monster Hunters. He led the team to kill more than 4 demon gods and destroyed 2 demon god pillars, which was unprecedented in history. During the Holy War, he made great contributions in the Knights Templars, the Assassins' Temple, the Warriors' Temple, and the Magic Temple. In this year's temple competition, he led the Light of Dawn Monster Hunters to win the championship and was nominated as a candidate for the chairman. Those who have any objections, please raise your hand. Although many people already had a certain understanding of Long Haochen, when they heard Yang Haohan's description of Long Haochen's background, especially when he mentioned that he was only 25 years old, some people still whispered to each other. Fortunately, no one raised their hand to object. Yang Haohan also secretly heaved a sigh of relief. What he was most afraid of was a problem in this link. Although he could pass a resolution with the minority following the majority, it would still have a negative impact on Long Haochen's future rule in the new federation. Well, since no one has any objections, the chairman candidate has been confirmed. Does anyone have any opinions or suggestions regarding the nomination of the 6th vice-chairman? The experts of the 6 temples still did not say anything, but at this moment something unexpected happened. Chen Hongba, the temple master of the Soul Temple, who was sitting on the rostrum, suddenly raised his hand and said, "I have an opinion." As Chen Hongba had expressed his dissatisfaction after the end of the territory battle yesterday, he suddenly jumped out to voice his opinion. Everyone was shocked and looked at him simultaneously. Chen Hongba stood up and said calmly, "I object to the proposal of me becoming the vice-chairman of the alliance." Yang Haohan looked at him in surprise and said doubtfully, "Brother Chen, you have to think it through. You represent the Soul Temple." Chen Hongba said calmly, "I have thought it through. I only need to become a counselor. The position of vice-chairman should be given to the new temple master of the Soul Temple." "What? The new temple master?" As soon as he said that, everyone was shocked again. It should be known that the Soul Temple was different from the Knights Templars. There had always been only one temple master. The change of temple master of the Soul Temple was an extremely important matter to the Temple League. Most importantly, no one had received any news about it before. Chen Hongba's words were too sudden. Chen Hongba said calmly, "What's so strange about it? The Soul Temple has always been democratic. The position of the Temple Master should be given to those who are capable. Chen Ying-er of the Soul Temple has already reached the 9th order and possesses the beast deity territory that is above mine. Furthermore, she is the first Soul Saintess of the Temple and has inherited the Soul Saint garment. She is the most suitable person to be the Temple Master of the Soul Temple. Therefore, the nomination of Vice-Chairman should naturally be given to her. Last night, the internal members of the Soul Temple have reached a consensus. Everyone on the rostrum had different expressions on their faces. Long Houchen was also surprised, while the other temple masters cursed in their hearts. What a sly old fox! During the temple competition, Chen Hongba put on an amazing show. Not only did he oppose Long Houchen during the competition, but he also raised doubts after the territory battle. But at this crucial moment, he made a 180-degree turn and gave up the position of the temple master to Chen Ying. This meant that 2 members of the Light of Dawn Monster Hunters would hold important positions in the Temple Federation. At the same time, one of the vice-chairmen belonged to the Light of Dawn Monster Hunters, which meant that the 6th vice-chairman would never join forces to impeach Long Houchen in the future. This was a huge favor. Even Li Jingji couldn't help but praise Chen Hongba in his heart. What a great scheme! Chen Hongba was the first to give up the position. Not only was it shocking, but it could also make the Light of Dawn Monster Hunters appreciate his favor and indirectly sell the Knights Templars a favor. It could be said to be killing 2 birds with 1 stone. While speaking, Chen Hongba had already walked down from the main platform. He gestured to Chen Inger on the Demon Hunt Squad's side, then calmly walked over to the Spiritual Temple's side and sat down. Chen Inger was also confused by her grandfather. However, she had no choice but to step up. Under everyone's gaze, she walked up to the rostrum and sat down in Chen Hongba's seat. At this moment, Xing Yu, the master of the Assassin Temple, snapped, "That old fart is really fast. He beat me to it. I don't agree with my suggestion. The master of the Assassin Temple has been replaced by Kai. Besides, she's also the inheritor of the Grim Reaper and possesses the spiritual furnace of Samsara, just like the Son of Reincarnation. In a sense, she has inherited the Son of Reincarnation's mantle and surpassed him. When she completed the inheritance more than a decade ago, she was already the designated successor of the Assassin Temple. Kair, come up. From now on, you're the master of the Assassin Temple and also the candidate for the vice-chairman of the Assassin Temple in the new federation." Long Houchen wasn't too surprised by Xing Yu's suggestion. After all, Xing Yu had said a long time ago that he would let Kair take over his position. As a result, Kair also walked up to the rostrum. In an instant, there were 3 monster hunters from the Light of Dawn on the rostrum. Yang Haohan said, "In that case, let's continue the meeting. Does anyone have any objections?" He asked subconsciously, but he didn't expect that there would be a response. Qiu Yonghao, the temple master of the warrior temple, suddenly stood up and said, "I also have to step down. I'm old and useless. Under my leadership, the warrior temple achieved the worst result in the history of this year's temple tournament. I really don't have the face to continue being the temple master. Last night, I've already discussed with the leaders of the temple. Today, I'll pass the position of the temple master of the warrior temple to the most promising young person in the temple. I hope that under her leadership, the warrior temple can play a greater role in the Federation's fight against the demons in the future. Yuan, please come up to the stage." Me? Wang Yuan looked at Qiu Yonghao's gaze and couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. Qiu Yonghao smiled and said, "Isn't it you? Among the younger generation of our warrior temple, is there anyone who can compare to you? I've seen all the hard work you've put in. From now on, the world belongs to you young people." As he said that, he had already walked out of his seat. At this moment, everyone on the rostrum could be said to have fallen into a state of shock. Xing Yu gave up his position to Kair because Kair was originally his successor and was also his granddaughter. Although Chen Hongba's succession was a little sudden, Chen Ying-er's situation in the Soul Temple was similar to that of Kair in the Assassin Temple. However, the warrior temple master Qiu Yonghao could be said to have nothing to do with Wang Yuan. Ever since Wang Yuan became a member of the Monster Hunters, she had never returned to the warrior temple. However, at this moment, Qiu Yonghao made the prompt decision to pass the position of Master of the Warrior Temple to Wang Yuanyuan. It must be said that Qiu Yonghao was very decisive. Qiu Yonghao did not have this idea just now. When Wang Yuanyuan returned and looked for him, and displayed her rank, 9 strength, Qiu Yonghao already had this idea. Perhaps there was still a gap between Wang Yuanyuan and Long Haochen, Kai and the others, but in the warrior temple, there was absolutely no one who could compete with her in the future. Even in the Light of Dawn monster hunters, she was also a powerhouse who already possessed a domain. In addition to her identity as a member of the Light of Dawn, she was also the most suitable person to represent the warrior temple. Qiu Yonghao was very familiar with Wang Yuanyuan's personality. He believed that after Wang Yuanyuan inherited the position of Master of the Warrior Temple, she would definitely contribute to the future of the Warrior Temple. Under Qiu Yonghao's encouraging gaze, Wang Yuanyuan stood up and strode towards the rostrum. When she came before Qiu Yonghao, her eyes were a little red. "Grandpa Qiu, Qiu Yonghao smiled and patted her on the shoulder. "You don't have to say anything. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing this for the future of the Warrior Temple. I believe that you will do well." As he spoke, he personally pulled out the chair that he was sitting on and pressed Wang Yuanyuan into the chair. After that, he let out a long sigh of relief and walked down the rostrum to sit among the powerhouses of the Warrior Temple. Yang Haohan, who was the host of the meeting, was also shocked to see such a big change before the election of the chairperson and vice-chairperson had even started. However, the meeting still had to continue. Although there was a change, it was fortunate that it would not affect the upcoming election. The following election process was surprisingly smooth. Long Haochen was successfully elected as the first chairperson of the Temple Federation. The vice-chairpersons were Long Tianin, Li Jingji, Ling Xiao, Kai-Chen Inger and Wang Yuanyuan. Out of the 7 most important positions, the Light of Dawn monster hunters actually took up 4 of them. The reason why no one objected was because the ones who objected were the original temple masters. Another reason was because of the strong performance of the Light of Dawn monster hunters in the temple competition. No matter if it was Long Haochen, Kai-Chen Inger or Wang Yuanyuan, they were all domain realm masters. Under the leadership of these young domain realm masters, it would definitely be beneficial to the development of their respective temple federation in the future. After the chairperson and vice-chairperson were elected, it was time to elect the counselors. Each of the 6 temple federation elected 6 counselors. There would be a total of 36 counselors. These 36 counselors did not include the chairperson and vice-chairperson. Long Haochen becoming the first chairperson of the Temple Federation was an acceptable outcome for the Temple Federation. Thus, the election of counselors went smoothly. In less than 4 hours, the election was over. Yang Haohan said, "After the election, the Federation will make arrangements to inform the public. We will try to inform the entire human race of the establishment of the Federation within a month. At the same time, the Federation still has many matters to handle. The integration of the 6 Temple Federation is an even more pressing matter. Next, let us invite the first chairperson of the Temple Federation to say a few words." Long Haochen nodded at Yang Haohan. Then, he stood up to greet the experts of the 6 Temple Federation. Only then did he use his clear voice to say, "I'm honored that everyone was able to elect me as the first chairperson of the Federation. I feel that the responsibility on my shoulders is very heavy. According to the rules that Temple Master Yang has just mentioned, every Federation government can only be in power for 10 years. After 10 years, there will be a new election. Perhaps the various systems of our new Federation are not perfect yet, but I believe that the Federation will definitely get better and better in the future. The most important reason for the establishment of the Federation is to integrate the advantages of the 6 Temple Federation and fight against the demons. This is also the most important aspect. As the chairperson of the Federation, what I can promise everyone is that in the next 10 years, I will definitely lead the Federation to launch a counterattack against the demons. I will strive to recover part of the lost land during my term. In my lifetime, I will do my best to lead the Federation out of the darkness and end this dark age that has lasted for over 6,000 years. Long Houchen's words were powerful and resonant. His voice was not loud, but there was a sense of absolute determination in his spirit. Hearing his words, the experts of the Sixth Temple Federation felt as though another holy war had begun. After a slight pause, Long Houchen continued, "I am still young, and the Federation has just been established. I still need everyone's support in various matters. In the coming period, I might not have too much energy to deal with the Federation's affairs. My teammates and I have to seize the time to improve our strength. The main matters of the Federation will be handled by Vice Chairman Long Tianyin, Li Jingji, Ling Xiao, and all the other representatives." The following topics of discussion were passed without a hitch. Although Long Houchen was the Federation chairman, it was more important for him to improve his strength. He and the rest of the monster hunters from the Glimmer of Dawn were still young, and had much more room for improvement than the older Type 9 powerhouses. Long Houchen had a few important matters to attend to. First, he had to obtain his own Throne of God. Once he obtained the Throne of God, not only would it be beneficial to his cultivation, it would also raise his reputation. Next, there was the issue of Haoyue's evolution. The might of the purple-gold Haoyue sword made Long Houchen fully understand the importance of Haoyue's evolution. 6 Haoyue was already so tyrannical. If it could successfully evolve to 8, its strength would definitely increase exponentially. At that time, with the help of Haoyue, he might really be able to contend against the Demon Emperor. After some discussion, it was decided that the 6 Great Temples' unification would be carried out in a more moderate manner. First, the 6 Great Temples would each send out a group of experts to gather in the Holy City and undergo unified training. They would form a group of 4,000 warriors, 1,000 knights, 500 assassins, magicians, summoners, and priests. They would be named after the Federation legions. Other than the 7,000 experts from the 6 Great Temple, there would also be 40,000 ordinary soldiers, for a total of 50,000 people. First, they would form 2 legions, named the Federation's First Legion and Federation's Second Legion. They would undergo unified training and integration, and after the integration, they would be sent to the borders to guard the weaker Southern Guard Pass and Exorcist Pass. Then, they would further transfer the experts from the 6 Great Temple for follow-up integration, until the original strength of the 6 Great Temple of the Temple League was completely transformed into the Federation Legion model. As for the 6 Great Strongholds, they would still be under the unified command of the 6 Great Temple. After all, the 6 Great Temple's strength was deeply rooted in the 6 Great Strongholds, and they were more familiar with it. Although the new Federation had been established, it couldn't be too radical. There had to be a process of change. The plan was to first integrate the professionals of the 6 Great Temple within a year. As for the weakening of the concept of the 6 Great Temple and the centralization of the Federation's power, it would definitely take a longer time. It would take some time for the professionals of the 6 Great Temple and the people to accept the new Federation. However, with the existence of the main premise of fighting against the demons, coupled with the unity of the higher-ups of the 6 Great Temple, it was believed that this process wouldn't take too long. When the Temple Federation finished integrating and formed a stronger cohesive force, it would be the time for the Federation to launch a counterattack against the demons. The meeting ended successfully. Long Houchen immediately told his companions that he would leave the Holy City the next day and head to the Knights Templars. The most important reason why Long Houchen was so eager to head to the Knights Templars was because of Haoyue. After Haoyue transformed into the purple-gold Haoyue sword, its bloodline seemed to have further integrated with Long Houchen's bloodline. In addition, during this period of time, Long Houchen's strength had also improved. Haoyue's evolution was already in a state where it could no longer be suppressed at any time. The last time Haoyue evolved, it encountered a powerful attack from the Lich King. It could be said that the completion of Haoyue's evolution had a certain element of luck. According to past experience, almost every time Haoyue evolved, the enemies it attracted would be stronger. This time, it jumped directly from 6 to 8. Not only would it take a longer time, but the enemies it attracted would also be stronger. Long Haochen didn't dare to let his guard down at all. He was afraid that one mistake would cause Haoyue to fall into a state of eternal damnation. Therefore, they had to be fully prepared. Improving their strength was the most important. Because of Haoyue's own secret, Long Haochen couldn't borrow the power of the Sixth Great Temple. He could only rely on his own team. In terms of increasing their strength, as a light attribute, he was obviously more important. If he could obtain the throne of God, his chances of success would naturally be much higher. The reason why they didn't go to Knights Templars immediately was that they still had something important to do. After being elected as the president of the new federation, Long Haochen's identity and status were already very different. They no longer lived in the residence of Knights Templars in the Federation headquarters. Instead, they directly moved into the residence of the highest level of the Federation headquarters. Although the office area of the former leader of the Covenant Alliance on the top floor was the smallest floor of the Federation headquarters, it was still thousands of square meters in size. Now, it should be called the Federation President's office area. The entire area was divided into multiple sections. There was a huge office, a lounge, a quiet room specially used for training, a study, a small conference room, and so on. Although the decoration wasn't luxurious, it was elegant and elegant. Not to mention Long Haochen, even if all the members of the Light of Dawn monster hunters gathered here, the space still seemed very spacious. Everyone, stay here and rest tonight. We'll set off for Knights Templars tomorrow morning, Long Haochen said to everyone. Han Yu said, President, aren't we going to wait for you to complete the Federation President's seal before we leave? Long Haochen smiled bitterly and said, You can just call me Captain. Why do I feel so awkward calling me President? In the Light of Dawn monster hunters, other than Long Haochen and Kai who were the 4 presidents, the other 3 had also become members. Zhang Fangfang, Yang Wenjiao, and Duan Yi had also occupied the positions of members of Knights Templars. Obviously, the Knights Templars had made preparations for the future successors. It could be said that the biggest winner of this year's Temple tournament was Knights Templars. Although Long Haochen had become the Federation President as the Light of Dawn Monster Hunters leader, he was a knight after all. His grandfather and father were the Temple Master and Knight of the Seal of Knights Templars. His relationship with Knights Templars would never fade. At the same time, other than Long Haochen, Han Yu, Zhang Fangfang, Yang Wenjiao, and Duan Yi were also outstanding young powerhouses. Han Yu and Zhang Fangfang's cultivation had broken through the rank 9, while Yang Wenjiao and Duan Yi had reached the pinnacle of rank 8. Just based on their strength, they were qualified to represent Knights Templars as members. After all, they were still so young. Originally, the biggest advantage that the Magic Temple had against Knights Templars was that Knights Templars had no successors. However, after this year's Temple tournament, this problem of Knights Templars could be said to have completely changed. The appearance of the 5 young Knight Templars had smoothly replaced the powerhouses of the older generation. Their future was even more promising. No matter how low-key Long Tianin and Yang Haohan were in today's meeting, Knights Templars were still the biggest winner. It could be said that they had a perfect arrangement in the new federation and had even won the admiration of the other major temples. After listening to Long Haochen's words, everyone couldn't help but laugh. They exchanged glances with each other and still felt a little strange. They still hadn't fully accepted their new identities. However, there was no doubt that after the Temple tournament and today's meeting, their status and responsibilities in the Federation were completely different. The elevation of their status also meant that their responsibilities were greater, especially for Long Houchen. He had shouldered the heavy responsibility of leading humans to completely destroy the demons. Long Houchen said to Zhang Fangfang, Yang Wenjiao, and Duan Yi, Brother Zhang, Brother Yang, and Brother Duan, the three of you have been following the light of dawn for some time. After this temple tournament, due to the special nature of the light of dawn, you can be considered as part of the light of dawn. In this case, you have to abide by the rules of the light of dawn monster hunters. The merit points of the monster hunters have always been used uniformly. Now that you have returned, please hand over your merit point. The three of them were slightly stunned. There was nothing unreasonable about Long Houchen's request. However, it didn't seem to complement his generous character. The three of them felt that it was a little strange, but they didn't think too much about it. They each handed over their merit points and integrated them into Long Houchen's merit token. After all, the three of them used to be the leaders of their respective monster hunters. Over the years, although their accumulated merit points couldn't be compared to the members of the Light of Dawn monster hunters, it was still not a small number. Cherninger pouted and said, Leader, you can't bully others. Long Houchen chuckled and didn't say anything. Beside him, Lin Xian laughed and said, I seem to have seen a little hen spreading her wings to protect her husband. Cherninger was furious and said, You're the hen. Brother Yao is here. Are you looking for a beating again? Have you forgotten the time when I beat you up so badly that you had to look for your teeth all over the ground? Lin Xian snorted disdainfully and said, I don't remember. Kyer had already stood up and went to Long Houchen's side. She said, Are we going now? She and Long Houchen were telepathically connected. She was the only one who could understand why Long Houchen wanted Yang Wenjiao and the other two's merit points. Long Houchen nodded and said, Let's go now. We have to leave early tomorrow morning, so we have to hurry and finish this matter. It's only noon now, so there should be enough time. Cherninger looked at Long Houchen in confusion and said, Boss, what are you talking about? We're done with the meeting. Is there anything else we need to do? Long Houchen smiled and said, There's a place we haven't been to for a long time. It's time to relax. Let's go. The bald priest, Sima Xian's eyes suddenly lit up and he said, I know. The Monster Hunters Trading Center. Long Houchen gave Sima Xian a thumbs up and said, Smart, let's go. Chapter 257. Hearing Sima Xian's words, everyone's eyes lit up. That's right, it had been a very, very long time since they had gone to the Monster Hunters Trading Center. Over the years, they had accumulated tens of millions of merit points that they had yet to spend. Captain, Yang Wenjiao's face was slightly flushed, and he was clearly agitated. Duan Yi and Zhang Fangfang were the same. They understood why Long Houchen wanted their merit points. Long Houchen wanted their merit points, which meant that he wanted to buy a full set of equipment for the three of them. With Long Houchen's character, the equipment that he wanted to buy for them would definitely be much more valuable than the merit points they were given. Long Houchen was clearly worried that they would not be willing to accept the gift, so he used words to trick them into handing over their merit points, giving them the same treatment as the other members of the Glimmer of Light monster hunters. This way, buying any equipment for them would be logical. Not only would he help them, he would also give them face. Long Houchen smiled and said, Don't say anything else. As long as you all recognize me as your captain, everything will be fine. Sima Xian said, Boss, bring along my little white flower. With her around, nothing good will slip through the net. Long Houchen hesitated for a moment and said, Can titled monster hunters bring outsiders into the Monster Hunters Trading Center? Lin Xian said, Boss, you are now the Federation President. Isn't this a problem that can be solved? Long Houchen said with a straight face, The position of Federation President is a responsibility, not a privilege. Sima Xian said, Boss, don't worry. Because my little white flower is the successor of the Sanctuary Alliance auction house, She has a trade relationship with the Monster Hunters Trading Center. Therefore, she can enter any floor of the trading center and won't bring us any trouble. Don't be fooled by her young age. She is now the chief appraiser of the Sanctuary Alliance auction house. I'm afraid that no one knows better than her what the Monster Hunters Trading Center has. Even the new treasures won't escape my little white flower's eyes. Looking at his proud expression, Wang Yuanyuan smiled and said, Sima, you are so happy that you are drooling. Sima Xian didn't mind and said, that is also because I am happy. Long Haochen smiled and said, good. Sima Xian, go invite Miss Feng Ling Er. We will go to the trading center first and meet up later. Yes, Chairman. Sima Xian suddenly stood up and bowed, then turned around and ran. Everyone couldn't help but laugh again. Not only did they come back, but they had also perfectly achieved their plan. For them, a new chapter had begun. At the Monster Hunters Trading Center, Light of Dawn's appearance was very low-key. Everyone was wearing a cloak that covered their figures. Long Haochen didn't use his authority as the Federation president at all. Just like an ordinary team of monster hunters, they quietly came to the Monster Hunters Trading Center. The trade center could be said to be overcrowded. Because of the grand tournament of the Sacred Temple, many demon hunt squads had chosen to come back to watch the event. Recently, the Demon Hunt Squad's trade center was especially lively, and the good stuff was at its peak. Long Haochen and the others naturally wouldn't stay on the first floor. They directly walked to the entrance of the second floor. As they walked through the crowd, suddenly, a young man in front of them jumped up and let out a cheer. Great, we finally got it! His jump happened to block the path of Long Haochen and the others. Several of his peers around the young man were also excited, and they cheered and jumped, completely blocking the passage. Please make way. Han Yu, who was beside Long Haochen, said. He deliberately lowered his voice so that only these few young men could hear him. The young man in the lead turned his head and couldn't help but be slightly surprised when he saw Long Haochen and the others wearing cloak. He was also holding a large sword in his hand, which seemed to be a rather good magic equipment. Of course, this was only good for the first floor of the Monster Hunters Trading Center. These young men looked good, but they were slightly inexperienced. When they saw that these people in front of them were not only wearing cloaks, but also had their heads slightly lowered, and their faces were covered by the brim of the cloak, they couldn't help but show curiosity. Are you also demon hunters? We are the new champion team of monster hunters, members of the soldier level number 1 monster hunters, a young girl beside the young man in the lead said proudly. The young man glared at her and said, What's there to show off? As he said that, he nodded apologetically to Han Yu and the others, and hurriedly moved to the side with his companions. Hearing the words, Soldier Level Number 1 Monster Hunters, the Light of Dawn Monster Hunters in the cloak raised their heads at the same time. Soldier Rank 1, what a familiar title. 10 years ago, this title belonged to them. Looking at these youngsters in front of them, they couldn't help but have all sorts of feelings welling up in their hearts. After a slight pause, Long Haochen smiled and nodded to these young demon hunters, then led everyone up to the second floor. The young men of the soldier level number 1 monster hunters were a little stunned by Long Haochen's smile. Long Haochen's smile was like a spring breeze caressing one's face, but also like the rising sun, giving off an indescribable feeling. Looking at his smile, it was as if even their souls had been cleansed. He's so handsome, the young girl who spoke earlier couldn't help but say. He looks a little familiar, another young man said. The young man in the lead suddenly trembled, and he cried out involuntarily, Light of Dawn, they are from the Light of Dawn Monster Hunters. The person who smiled at us just now is the leader of the Light of Dawn Monster Hunters, Long Haochen. Didn't he just get elected as the new Federation chairman? This afternoon, the announcement about the new Federation had been posted in the Holy City. The young girl murmured, Back then, the Light of Dawn Monster Hunters also started as Soldier Level Number 1, Hearing their exclamation, the surrounding demon hunters were all attracted. Unfortunately, the figures of Long Houchen and the others had already disappeared at the end of the second floor. The group went straight to the top floor of the Monster Hunters Trade Center. Compared to the bustling lower floors, the top floor seemed empty. This place seemed more like a resting area, with comfortable sofas and exquisite decorations. Seeing them walk up, an old man immediately stepped forward and respectfully greeted them. "Respected demon hunters, may I know what you need?" Being able to come to this floor had already revealed the identity of Long Houchen and the others. Only legend monster hunters could enter this top floor. Long Houchen took off his cloak and smiled. "Hello, please help us verify the number of achievement points, and then bring up the list of all the epic grade and above equipment in the trade center. I'll have to trouble you. Also, we also need empty silver crystals." "Yes," the old man respectfully replied and slowly retreated. Although this old man seemed to be a staff member, Long Houchen could feel from the spiritual energy fluctuations coming from his body that this old man's cultivation was at least at the 8th rank. After becoming a legend monster hunter, there was no longer a need to search for items here. They could directly obtain the list of items they needed, and then choose what they needed. This was much more convenient compared to low-level demon hunters. Moreover, as long as the Monster Hunters Trade Center had items and equipment, legend monster hunters could choose first. They could even purchase items on credit. Of course, there was a limit to how much credit they could take. Not long after, the old man came back with a tray and respectfully handed it to Long Houchen. On the tray was a rectangular crystal about a foot long and half a foot wide. On it was a clear list of images. It looked like a miniature version of the magic crystal screen hanging outside the Holy Alliance's great training field. Long Houchen took out the crystal and held it in his hand. The list on the crystal screen was mainly made up of names, and in front of each name was a small image. Long Houchen subconsciously raised his hand and tapped on the first image. Suddenly, a ray of light was projected from the screen into the air, clearly appearing in front of everyone. It was a gorgeous magic robe. The robe itself was dark gold in color, and there were golden threads embroidered on it. The luxurious golden dragon pattern gradually changed color from the bottom to the top. At the bottom was a dark gold color, and all the way up it finally became a pure gold color. At the chest buckle, there was a golden red gem the size of a fist, and the entire robe was emitting a soft orange light. Although it was only an image projection, it looked very realistic, as if the real thing was presented in front of them. Moreover, it was still rotating slowly. The magnificent luster, the dazzling design, and the epic luster seemed to be proudly showing off its power to everyone. The old man who presented the magic crystal screen to Long Houchen stood at the side respectfully and said, "This magic robe is called the Praise of Holy Fire, epic level, suitable for light and fire mages. It is more inclined towards fire mages, and it uses light to boost the power of fire magic. It can reduce the spiritual power of any fire magic by 50%, and at the same time, increase the power of the fire magic by 20%. Also, the fire magic attack will be imbued with the light attribute. The robe comes with the skill Praise of Holy Fire, and every time it is used, it needs to be under the sun for 2 hours before it can be used again. Once the Praise of Holy Fire is used, all the light spiritual power in the Praise of Holy Fire will be ignited, and a powerful holy fire will be produced instantly." Looking at the dazzling Praise of Holy Fire, all the members of the Light of Dawn Monster Hunters, including Long Houchen, were in a daze. They had seen a few pieces of legendary equipment, but in terms of appearance, the Praise of Holy Fire could be said to be the most powerful piece of equipment they had ever seen. Lin Xian stood up excitedly and looked at the robe with a burning gaze. He couldn't wait to rush into the light immediately. Of course, among the members of the Light of Dawn, this magic robe was only suitable for him. Besides, he had always loved such dazzling items. The old man continued, "In a sense, This praise of holy fire is an existence that surpasses ordinary epic grade equipment. There is still half a grade between epic grade and legendary equipment. For equipment of this grade, it is generally known as immortal grade or sublegendary equipment. However, equipment of this grade is almost as rare as legendary equipment, so it is very rare. The material used for the praise of holy fire is the main tendon of a fire dragon that was sewn together with many other precious materials. In terms of material quality, it can reach the level of a legendary equipment. However, during the refining process, the various materials were too intense in terms of light and fire, so there was a certain degree of conflict. In the end, it did not break through the threshold of a legendary equipment. Long Houchen nodded slightly and looked at Lin Xian at the side at the same time, only to see that the good-for-nothing Lin Xian's mouth was wide open. It seemed like he was about to drool. Mine, Long Houchen couldn't help but laugh. Fortunately, he didn't ask him any more. He asked the old man, "Senior, how many merit points do I need to exchange for the praise of holy fire?" After a slight hesitation, the old man said, "The price of the praise of holy fire is 2.4 million merit points." Hearing this number, everyone couldn't help but gasp. It was important to know that merit points were almost 100 times more precious than gold coins. 2.4 million merit points was an astronomical number even for legend monster hunters. Long Houchen had once asked his grandfather about the exchange price of epic-grade equipment. Long Tianyin had told him that the average epic-grade equipment was around 500,000 to 1 million merit points. Especially outstanding epic-grade equipment would be worth more than 1 million merit points. However, he didn't expect that it would be such a big piece right off the bat. Although the Light of Dawn monster hunters had accumulated an astronomical number of merit points over the years, Long Houchen estimated that it was only around 10 million merit points. This time, they were here to exchange for equipment for the entire team. If they spent over 2 million merit points on a single piece of equipment, they really wouldn't be able to bear it. "Senior, what is the total number of merit points our team has?" Long Houchen asked after a brief moment of shock. In his heart, he had already decided to obtain this magic robe. As the only magician in the team, Lin Xian's strong points were high burst power and high damage. If he had the support of a branch ability like the Glorious Praise, he would definitely be a great weapon against the demons. When the Light of Dawn's merit points were mentioned, the old man's expression became even more respectful. He had been working at the highest level of the Monster Hunters Trading Center all year round. Although he wasn't clear about the decision to change the Federation during the Alliance Conference, he was exceptionally sensitive to merit points. He had seen many legend-rank monster hunters with terrifying merit points, but the Light of Dawn monster hunters before him was the one that shocked him the most. On the merit token, there was a detailed record of Long Houchen and the others' age, as well as the merit points obtained by the monster hunters. When the old man first saw Long Houchen and the others, he thought that they looked so young because of their high cultivation. However, after reading the records on the merit token, he realized that the people in front of him were real youths. However, it was also these youths who had left behind incomparably shocking records of their achievements and achievements on the merit token. Respected team leader Long Houchen, the total amount of merit points of your esteemed team is 14,628,631. As you are already legend rank monster hunters, you can enjoy a 20% discount on any item you purchase from our trading center. 14 million was definitely an incomparably shocking number, especially when Zhang Fangfang, Yang Wenjiao, and Duan Yi heard it. They were even more certain of their previous guesses and felt even more grateful towards Long Houchen. The total amount of merit points of the three of them combined was probably only slightly more than 1 million. If they were to average it out, they would naturally be at a huge advantage. At this moment, Sima Xian's voice came from the entrance of the top floor. What a beautiful magic robe. Boss, who did you prepare this for?" They saw Sima Xian walking towards them with his little white flower. Feng Ling was wearing a long white dress, which was indeed more in line with her nickname of Little White Flower. After slightly bowing to Long Haochen and the others, Feng Ling's gaze landed on the light projection of the praise of holy fire. On the other side, Lin Xian was already glaring at Sima Xian and said, "What do you mean by prepared for you? This is clearly an equipment for us fire element magicians." Sima Xian snorted and said, "Don't give me that. Just by looking at the color, I can tell that it has the light element. How did it become your fire element magician's equipment? This brother is also a magician, a priest." Lin Xian suddenly smiled and said, "All right, I'll let you have it." Sima Xian was startled and said, "Brother Yuyao, when did you become so easy to talk to?" Lin Xian said in a bad mood, "If I let you have it, would you be able to wear it? You are a magician? You're the only freak in the entire Federation. Can you still fight wearing this robe that can't even stretch your legs out? As long as you're willing to wear it on the battlefield, this brother will let you have it." Hearing him say this, Sima Xian immediately had a look of defeat on his face. Indeed, he was a priest, but he was a priest who wore armor. If he wore such a long robe, he would probably break it out of impatience before it could be used. Long Haochen said, "All right, all of you sit down first. Miss Feng Ling, what do you think of this equipment?" Feng Ling said, "This is the praise of holy fire. It came from the ruins of a fire elf and is a rare fire element robe. At least in the history of the Federation, it is unique. However, this robe is very spiritual. If you want to use it, you need to get its approval. I suggest that you try it out first. If you can get its approval, then you can decide to buy it." The old man nodded and said, "Miss Feng Ling is right. I also suggest that." Long Haochen nodded and said, "All right, then I'll have to trouble you to bring it over. Let's continue looking at the equipment records here." Moving his finger down, Long Haochen chose the next item. With a change of light, a sapphire blue necklace appeared in the air. Feng Ling shook her head and said, "This is for water-type magicians. It's not suitable for you. You can pass." She was clear about the abilities of the members of the Light of Dawn monster hunters. With her around, it would be much easier to choose equipment. Next up was the selection of fine goods. The Demon Hunt Squad Trading Center was worthy of being the place with the most good stuff in the entire alliance. Even Feng Ling said that the stock of epic grade and above equipment here was several times more than that of the Sacred Alliance's auction house. The entire selection process lasted for an entire afternoon. Divine equipment would not appear here. That was because the moment a divine equipment appeared, it would be taken away by the temple it belonged to. Moreover, the existence of divine equipment was too rare. However, they also obtained quite a lot of good stuff here. In the end, a total of more than 10 pieces of epic equipment were selected. There were as many as 3 pieces of immortal grade equipment. Respected team leader Long Haochen, after a discount, these equipment will cost a total of 62 million merit points. You are legend rank monster hunters and can borrow 5 million merit points. After deducting your original merit points, you are still short of 1 million merit points. Do you think you should give up one piece of equipment? Give up? How could they give up? Every piece of equipment here already had a target to choose from. It was very difficult to decide. Without waiting for Long Haochen to speak, Feng Ling suddenly said, "Old son, the Light of Dawn monster hunters are the rulers of the new Federation. At the same time, I am willing to act as their guarantor in my capacity as the owner of the Sanctuary Alliance Auction Center. I will lend them more money. They will definitely be able to repay it within 5 years." The old man whom she addressed as old son hesitated for a moment and said, "I will need to ask for instructions from the higher-ups." "There's no need to ask for instructions. Give it to them." A familiar voice suddenly sounded. Immediately after, a familiar person walked out from a room on the top floor. Seeing this person, Long Houchen could not help but stand up in surprise. He said, "Grandfather Yang, why are you here?" This old man who suddenly walked out from the room was the strongest knight of the Knights Templars, the Star Holy Knight Yang Haoyu. Yang Haoyu smiled and said, "Chairman, the Monster Hunters Trading Center and the Monster Hunters Mission Tower have always been under my control. However, very few people know about this. Even the temple masters of the 6 major temples are not aware of this. We monster hunters have our own system. Every generation has a demon hunter master. Only Overlord tier monster hunters are qualified to know about the existence of the demon hunter master. The demon hunter master of this generation is in charge of all matters related to the monster hunters. It can be said that I am the demon hunter master of all the monster hunters. If Chairman is interested, you can also be the next demon hunter master." At this point, the smile on Yang Haoyu's face couldn't help but grow wider. He could not be more satisfied with these young people in front of him, especially when it came to the arrangements of the Knights Templars. The final result could only be described as perfect. Now that Long Houchen's status was different, even when he faced Long Houchen, he still had to address him as chairman. Long Houchen hurriedly shook his head and said, "Grandfather Yang, I have enough things to deal with. I can't afford to be the demon hunter master. Moreover, you are still so young. There will be no problem for you to be in charge of the monster hunters for hundreds of years. It is the fortune of all the demon hunters to have you in charge." Yang Haoyu said, "All right, you can pack up your things and leave. I will take care of the other things. You are returning to the Knights Templars, right? Don't forget what I told you. I wish you success." Long Houchen crossed his right fist in front of his chest and gave Yang Haoyu a standard knight's salute. He said, "Grandfather Yang, thank you for your support. We will not let you down." Yang Haoyu calmly smiled and said, "I am not supporting you. I am supporting the future of the demons." One after another, epic equipment shining with an enchanting luster was collected by everyone. Among these pieces of equipment, Long Houchen did not have a single one. Kai Er only had a close-fitting inner armor. Chen Ing-er had a set of 6 epic crystal balls. The other's harvest was much more abundant. Wang Yuan had changed into an epic armor. At the same time, she had obtained a sufficient amount of void silver crystals. When she used the Divine Spirit Shield last time, the void silver crystals were used up. With this replenishment, the Divine Spirit Shield could once again display its epic luster. No, it should be immortal grade. After socketing all 7 void silver crystals, the Divine Spirit Shield could reach immortal grade. Lin Xian's harvest was even greater. The Radiant Holy Fire's Praise Magic Robe and a Fire Dragon Crystal Core as the main gem was a super staff. Both of these items were actually immortal grade. It could be said that Lin Xian had gained the most from this equipment change. Sima Xian did not choose any equipment. Feng Ling said that she had already prepared a set of equipment for Sima Xian at the Sanctuary Alliance Grand Auction. Surprisingly, Han Yu and Zhang Fangfang also did not choose any equipment. Both of them had resolute gazes. Although they did not say it, everyone could vaguely guess their goal. Like Long Houchen, they were aiming for the throne of God that could provide a full set of offensive and defensive equipment. They did not choose any equipment at the Monster Hunters Trade Center because they wanted to cut off all means of retreat. Compared to them, after some hesitation, Yang Wenjiao and Duan Yi chose their equipment. Under Long Houchen's deliberate arrangement, Yang Wenjiao obtained a pair of epic greatswords, while Duan Yi obtained an epic shield and an epic greatsword. Just their equipment alone cost them over 6 million merit points. Apart from these 9 pieces of equipment that belonged to individuals, Long Houchen also purchased several pieces of team equipment and medicine. Among them, there were 2 medicinal pills for rank 9 powerhouses to comprehend their domains, which cost a terrifying amount of merit points. These 2 medicinal pills were given to Lin Xian and Sima Xian respectively. Among the original 7 members of the Light of Dawn monster hunters, 4 already had domains. Han Yu's next goal was the throne of God. Therefore, Long Haochen naturally had to take care of Lin Xian and Sima Xian, who were already rank 9. Although Zhang Fangfang was also rank 9, his situation was the same as Han Yu's. He also took the initiative to give up the competition for medicinal pills. Among the team equipment, the one that Long Haochen liked the most was a necklace called Instant Flash Domain. This equipment was a simple silver necklace with a transparent crystal pendant. If not for the orange-red glow that represented the epic grade, it would have looked rather ordinary. The crystal was in the shape of a snowflake, which was slightly unique. The reason why it was called Instant Flash Domain was that this epic grade equipment, in a sense, had the ability of a domain. The user could inject spiritual energy under the guidance of their own spirit force and release multiple flashlights from the Instant Flash Domain to connect to their companions. During battle, they could teleport the companions connected to the flashlights to their side at any time. Flashlights had domain precedence, which meant that even if their companions were restricted by the enemy's domain, they could still be teleported out. However, flashlights also had a limit. That was, the user had to accept it before it could form a connection with the user. With this team equipment, in addition to Long Haochen's powerful spirit force, he could use his identity as the core of the team to adjust the positions of his companions at any time on the battlefield. Coupled with the soul chain, the survival ability of the Light of Dawn monster hunters on the battlefield was greatly enhanced. It could be said that the overall strength of the Light of Dawn monster hunters had a qualitative leap after today's equipment change. They just had to wait for the trip to Knights Templars to obtain the recognition of the Throne of God, as well as Yang Wenzhao and Duan Yi to undergo the Knight on a Golden Pedestal assessment. The strongest monster hunters in history was about to be born. That night, everyone from the Glimmer of Dawn bid farewell to their loved ones. The next morning, at the first glimmer of dawn, they left the holy city together with the experts from the Night Temple who were participating in the grand competition, heading straight for the Night Temple's dragon-resisting mountain pass. At the same time, the new Federation had begun to operate at a high speed. Li Jingji and Long Tianyin stayed in the Holy City and were responsible for the formation and training of the new Federation's 1st and 2nd Legions. The 6 great temples had already urgently transferred professional powerhouses from the Holy City and nearby areas to form a team. Even some of the powerhouses who would participate in the temple tournament had stayed behind. As the first 2 combined legions of the new Federation, it was natural that they would do their best to nurture them into the strongest existences so that they could demonstrate the correctness of the Federation's policies and guide the people to trust the new Federation more. Demons, Demonic City, Demon Palace. What? Long Haochen isn't dead? Demon God Emperor Feng Xiu's hands suddenly exerted force on the throne, causing the armrest of the Black Throne to emit creaking sounds. However, it didn't show any signs of breaking. This throne was said to be made from the bones of the 1st-generation Demon God Emperor, and represented the dignity of the Demon God Emperor. It had an extremely important meaning to the demon race. A Bao sat quietly in the seat next to Demon Emperor Feng Xiu. His long purplish-black hair draped over his shoulders. Compared to a few years ago, he seemed much more mature now. He looked like a statue, and his handsome face was slightly pale. When he heard the name Long Haochen, his calm eyes suddenly became sharp. It was as if 2 bolts of lightning flashed in the demon palace. Even the demon emperor could not help but narrow his eyes. Over the past 5 years, a Bao seemed to have changed into a different person. His personality was much more reserved, and he became taciturn. However, only the demon emperor knew how much a Bao had sacrificed in these 5 years. Even the demons, Anan, who was known as the war-mad demon god, could not compare to a Bao's hard work in cultivation. As the son of the demon emperor, a Bao had the pure blood of the heaven-defying demon dragon clan flowing in his body. Coupled with his hard work, his cultivation had undergone an earth-shattering change. Standing below to report was the commander of the Demon Emperor's Black Dragon Guards, Huang Shu. Yes, Your Majesty. According to the reports from our spies in the Temple League, not only is Long Haochen not dead, he even led his monster hunters to participate in the Temple League's temple tournament. He even won the championship. Long Haochen showed great strength in the tournament. He already has a domain, Huang Shuo said respectfully. Bao listened attentively. His expression seemed calm, but his hands had unknowingly clenched into fists. The Demon Emperor frowned and said in a deep voice, I killed Long Haochen with my own hands. How could he be resurrected? His heart has been destroyed. Even the most powerful human priest would not be able to restore him. There must be something wrong with this information. Huang Shuo, mobilize all our spies in the human side. Get as much information as you can at all costs. Hurry. Yes, Your Majesty. Could it be a trap laid by the humans? Huang Shuo said. The Demon Emperor said, It's not impossible. I killed Long Haochen with my own hands. How could it be wrong? However, why would the humans do that? Could it be that the holy war 4 years ago did not teach them a sufficient lesson? Father, let me make a trip to the human side. If Long Haochen is still alive, I will bring his corpse back. In Bao's heart, there was only one person he hated the most, and that was Long Haochen. Long Haochen had once shattered his confidence, and caused him to lose the woman he loved the most. It also gave birth to an obsession in his heart. Without enough strength, everything was just an illusion. Therefore, he had been training crazily for the past few years, preparing to take over the position of Demon Emperor in the future. No, it's not necessary. Long Haochen is indeed dead. Huang Shuo, go and invite the Star Demon over. I have something to ask him. Yes. Huang Shuo replied respectfully and quickly left. Bao said in a deep voice, Father, I don't understand. Why didn't you tear his corpse into pieces? Instead, you let his companions and his corpse go? He had always been puzzled about this. He didn't understand why the Demon Emperor would do this. At this time, the Demon Emperor's expression was also a bit ugly. He coldly snorted and said, You don't need to ask about this. I have my own plans. I naturally have my own reasons for doing this. Bao no longer spoke and lowered his head, choosing to remain silent. Along with the increase in strength and age, his status in the demon race was also getting higher and higher. Every generation of demon god emperors was like this. When he was still a crown prince, along with the increase in cultivation, his status in the heaven-defying demon dragon clan would also get higher and higher. This continued until the old demon god emperor was surpassed due to old age, or after the old demon god emperor died, he would inherit the position of demon god emperor. In the history of the demons, there was even an incident where the next demon emperor personally killed the previous demon emperor. Not long after, the star demon, Vaisak, accompanied by Huang Shuo, arrived at the demon palace. Big brother, you were looking for me? Vaisak respectfully saluted the demon emperor and stood to the side. At the same time, he nodded slightly to greet Bao. Bao only bowed slightly, but didn't stand up or speak. The demon emperor said, Third brother, Huang Shuo should have told you. There is news from the humans that Long Haochen has been resurrected. What do you think about this? Star demon Vaisak laughed and said, It's just a rumor. Big brother, have you forgotten that Long Haochen was personally killed by you? Moreover, after he died, I immediately predicted the future of us demons. Although what I used was only ordinary prophecy, what I saw was a bright and transparent future for the demons. The previous threat had completely disappeared. Although I don't know why the humans did this, I can be sure that Long Haochen must have died, along with Austin Griffin. Hearing Vaisak's affirmative answer, the demon emperor's mood relaxed a little. He nodded and said, If that's the case, that's for the best. I'm just afraid that the humans have some special method to resurrect him. At this time, Abao suddenly interrupted. Third uncle, if you use the great prophecy again, can you predict the situation of Long Houchen? The demon emperor frowned and said, Abao, don't talk nonsense. Do you think the great prophecy can be used casually? It's not like you don't know how long your third uncle was weak in order to use the great prophecy. He only recovered recently. Chapter 258. Vesak hesitated for a moment, then said, It's not impossible to use the great prophecy technique again, but my life force may also come to an end. At the same time, I can't directly predict Long Houchen's future, I can only predict the future of us demons. Although he didn't directly refuse, it was almost the same as refusing. Demon Emperor waved his hand and said, Third brother, don't listen to Abao's nonsense. Since you can be sure that the fate of us demons has been changed, then there's no need to predict anything. However, we still have to investigate this matter, and see what the purpose of the humans is. Abao said in a deep voice, Father, I don't know why, but I always have a premonition that Long Houchen really isn't dead. Demon Emperor's face darkened. Enough, don't be too full of yourself. You're not your third uncle, what kind of prediction do you know? Abao's expression changed slightly, but he didn't continue to argue. Huang Zhuo said in a timely manner, Your Majesty, then I'll immediately go investigate the purpose of the humans and the situation of the temple tournament. Demon Emperor nodded, then said to Star Demon Vesak, Third brother, you can go back too. Yes. Nisak respectfully agreed, then left with Huang Zhuo. Demon Emperor slowly stood up, glanced at Abao, and said in a deep voice, You have to remember, even if you have doubts in your heart, you don't have to say them out loud. Especially when it comes to Moon Demon and Star Demon, you must be respectful. Abao stood up and came to Demon Emperor's side. Father, with your cultivation, even the other demon gods combined can't compare to you, why do you still? God Emperor Tang coldly snorted and said, What do you know? When I plan to let you take over the position of Demon Emperor, I will naturally tell you. You only need to know that for us demons, any demon god is important, especially Moon Demon and Star Demon. Only when the two of them have enough tacit understanding with me can we have enough power to maintain stability in the face of some major situations. Alright, from tomorrow onwards I will be in seclusion. The affairs of the Demon Palace will be handed over to you. By the way, I asked you to investigate Yu Ye's situation. Is there any news? Abao shook his head and said, Not yet. Yu Yi has been missing for several years, and there is no trace of her at all. However, I have found out that within our demons there are more and more discordant voices. According to insider information, they seem to have some kind of organization that is constantly accumulating strength. However, their organization is very tight and hidden very deeply. I am still investigating. Feng Xiu coldly snorted and said, What do you know? Feng Xiu coldly smiled, saying, Just a jumping clown, nothing to be afraid of. You don't need to pay too much attention to this matter, cultivation is more important. Your improvement these past few years has been seen by Royal Father. After I finish my seclusion this time, I will hand over more affairs to you to handle. Royal Father promises you that as long as your cultivation surpasses the Moon Demon God, the position of Demon God Emperor will be passed to you. Abao's eyes moved, but he lowered his head and said, Father, you are in the prime of your life. My race needs your leadership. Feng Xiu lightly said, You don't need to hide anything in front of me. The current you is just like me in the past. You can also leave. Remember, during my seclusion, do not disturb me no matter what, understand? Yes. Abao replied and turned to leave. Looking at his departing figure, the Demon Emperor sneered, So what if you are my son? In the face of power, everything is illusory. At this point, a handsome face filled with a bright temperament suddenly appeared in his mind. He couldn't help but be a little absent-minded and murmured, Child, you really didn't die? Just as the demon emperor was wondering if Long Houchen was still alive, Long Houchen had already led his companions to the Basilica of the Knights, the dragon-resisting mountain pass. The impregnable pass was right in front of him. Long Houchen couldn't help but feel excited. He was finally back. Not only could he see his mother, but he could also see his father, whom he hadn't seen for a long time. It had been more than 10 years since he was separated from his father. That year, when he personally saw his father use the throne of God of doomsday and slaughter, he was determined to become a Knight of the Seal. And today, more than 10 years later, when he was about to reunite with his father, it was also time for him to obtain the recognition of the throne of God. The 6 wings on his back retracted. Long Houchen was the first to descend towards the dragon-resisting mountain pass. Perhaps it was because he missed his father for more than 10 years, but during the descent, he couldn't help but roar towards the sky. The other powerhouses of the Knights Templars and the members of the Light of Dawn monster hunters deliberately lagged behind him. Now, Long Houchen not only had a pivotal position in the Knights Templars, but he was also the chairman of the new federation. Even though he wasn't that old, he had already conquered these knights with his strength. The clear roar was clear and impassioned. It wasn't ear-piercing, but it gave people a carefree feeling as if all the emotions in their hearts were released. Long Houchen retracted his 6 wings and arrived at Yulong Pass in the blink of an eye. Before they returned, the news had already been sent back to the Knights Templars. At this moment, at the top of the Knights Templars' city wall, all the knights in their military uniforms were facing the arrival of Long Houchen. All of them respectfully saluted the new chairman of the new federation, who descended from the sky with the most standard movements. Standing in the middle of Yulong Pass was a tall man with a handsome and resolute face, broad shoulders, and incomparably sharp eyes. But when he saw the golden figure descending from the sky, his eyes became blurred. Long Houchen. The golden figure descending from the sky almost instantly threw himself into his arms, and the two hugged each other tightly. "Father!" Long Houchen's voice trembled, and even the tone of his voice changed a little. For any man, when they were young, their father would almost always be their idol. Moreover, what kind of person was Long Houchen's father? He was the owner of the throne of God of doomsday and massacre, the Knight of the Seal of Knights Templars, Long Xingwu, the true hero of a generation, the super-strong Knight of Punishment. His father had always been the pride of Long Houchen's heart. In the depths of his heart, his father's tall figure had always been his goal and motivation to move forward. All of his efforts were mostly to prove himself to his father. Even today, more than 10 years later, when he saw his father again, that childish admiration could not help but surge in an instant, causing this new chairman of the Federation to cry uncontrollably. Long Houchen's body was no longer as thin as his father's. Both father and son were tall, and they were also the core and pride of Knights Templars. All the knights would salute them respectfully. Together with Long Tianyin, who was far away in the Holy City, the 3 generations of the Long family were the most outstanding talents of Knights Templars. The Long family could also be said to be the most powerful family in Knights Templars. Although they had never cared about this, in the hearts of the knights, especially the young knights, their existence was incomparable. They were the true idols. Feeling Long Houchen's emotions, Long Xingwu could not control himself for a long time. Compared to Long Houchen's pure excitement, the look in his eyes was much more complicated. His hands, which were usually extremely stable, were now trembling slightly as he constantly called out Long Houchen's name. Long Houchen, I'm sorry. I didn't protect you well. Dad, don't say that. I'm your son. If it wasn't for your guidance, I wouldn't be who I am today. Now that I've grown up, I should be the one to protect you and Mom. The father and son let go of each other and looked at each other. Their eyes were filled with emotions. Long Xingwu took a deep breath and shook off the tears on his face. Suddenly, as if he had made up his mind, he looked at Long Houchen with a determined gaze and said, Son, no matter what happened in the past, you're still my son, Long Xingwu. You're my only son. From now on, if anyone wants to hurt you, they'll have to step over my dead body." His words were resolute and forceful, as if he was trying to convince something. Looking at his father's teary eyes and the gray hair on his temples, Long Houchen's tears flowed again. He was so emotional that he didn't feel the pain hidden in his father's firm tone. He only felt that his father, who had reached the 9th level of cultivation, had aged a lot in just over a decade. It seemed like his father wasn't much younger than his grandfather. With his cultivation at the 9th level, he shouldn't have aged so much. One could only imagine what his father had been through over the past decade. Long Xingwu took a deep breath and forced himself to calm down. A smile appeared on his face, and he suddenly hit his left chest with his right fist and said in a loud voice, "I, Long Xingwu, Master of the Knights Templars, am here to greet the President of the Federation." Long Houchen was stunned for a moment. He suddenly realized that he was no longer the young man who followed his father and struggled under his father's hellish training more than a decade ago. He was now the first president of the Human Alliance, who could represent all of humanity. He hit his chest with his right fist, making a bang sound. Long Houchen was unable to speak. At that moment, the people of the Light of Dawn monster hunters and the experts of the Knights Templars landed on the city wall. Under Long Xingwu's leadership, a grand welcome ceremony was held for the Knights' triumphant return at the dragon-resisting pass. Although the final winner of the competition in the temple was the Light of Dawn monster hunters, among the original 6 temples, the Knights Templars had undoubtedly benefited the most. The attack led by Li Jingji at the Magic Temple did not produce any results in the end. Even if Long Houchen and his companions had not appeared, the final victory would still have belonged to the Knights Templars, who had a profound background. After the grand welcome ceremony, Long Houchen and his father went to see his mother. The family of 3 was finally reunited after more than a decade. No, it should be a family of 4. Along with Long Houchen was an inseparable part of his life, the love of his heart, Kai-Er. Bai couldn't be more satisfied with Kai-Er, especially after Kai-Er had recovered her memory. She was no longer the ice-cold saint maiden of the past. In front of Long Houchen's parents, Long Xingwu and Bai were always brimming with a happy smile while crying. Looking at his son, future daughter-in-law, and wife in front of him, Long Xingwu suddenly turned his head away and wiped away the tears on his face again. He unconsciously clenched his fists and used his right fist to beat his chest. With his back facing Long Houchen and the other 2, his eyes were filled with tears of regret. A big hand rested on his shoulder and said, "Dad, what's wrong? Aren't our family reunited now? Let bygones be bygones. Look, you already have so much white hair. You have to pay more attention to your health in the future. Otherwise, you won't be good enough for Mom." Long Xingwu nodded slightly and said with a slightly choked voice, "Son, you must have had a hard time all these years you were missing." Long Houchen chuckled and said, "No, we only had a fortuitous encounter after the demons killed the leopard demon god. Everyone went into seclusion and entered deep meditation. That's why we were delayed for so long before rushing back. Otherwise, we would have returned long ago." Long Xingwu suddenly raised his head and looked at Long Houchen. Looking at the gentle smile on Long Houchen's handsome face, he could feel the pure light in his son. "You're not telling the truth." Long Xingwu looked at his son and his eyes flickered. He wanted to say something, but in the end, he held it back. Long Houchen was a little surprised and said, "Dad, what's wrong?" Long Xingwu shook his head and forced a smile. "Yes, you're right. The past is in the past. We have to look forward. No matter how many hardships we go through, you are still my son. This will never change. In the future, we will fight against the demons together." Bai Yu laughed and said, "Xingning, you've said many times today that Long Houchen is your son. Do you still need to emphasize it?" Long Xingwu was stunned. He glanced at Bai Yu with a complicated look in his eyes. However, he quickly returned to normal and said, "Perhaps it's because I haven't seen my son for too long. Even now, I still feel like it's not real." Bai Yu pulled Kai Er's hand and said, "I'm only concerned about when Kai Er can truly become my daughter-in-law." Long Houchen and Kai Er's faces turned red at the same time. Kai Er stole a glance at him, but when their eyes met, she immediately lowered her head. Long Houchen laughed and said, "Dad, Mom, if you agree, then you should personally go to the Exorcist Mountain Pass to propose." In this era, marriage proposals were carried out by parents and elders. Once the two were in love with each other and received their parents' blessings, they could officially hold the wedding ceremony. Kai Er said with some hesitation, "Long Houchen, we still have a lot of things to do. There's no need to be anxious." Long Houchen smiled and said, "That won't do. I've been anxious for a long time. Moreover, even if we aren't anxious, Ing and Yuan will be anxious. They aren't young anymore. The new federation has just been established, so there are indeed a lot of things to do. However, from a certain point of view, my position as the Federation President is only nominal. The handling of the Federation's affairs will still be handled by Grandfather and Temple Masterly. For us, what we need to do is to further enhance our strength so that we can challenge the Demon Emperor and those demons' peak experts in the near future. Once these recent matters are settled, we should have a period of peace. When the time comes, we will first hold the wedding ceremony. This way, our companions will also be able to get married. After the family matters are settled, we can work hard to cultivate together." Bai Yu repeatedly nodded and said, "No matter how busy we are, we can't delay the important matters of life. I think it's settled. Xingyu will go to the Exorcist Mountain Pass to propose." At this time, Long Xingwu's mood had already calmed down. He nodded and said with a smile, "Speaking of which, I haven't seen Lingxin for many years." From a certain point of view, Kai Er's father, Xing Lingxin, could be considered as Long Xingwu's half-disciple. At that time, Long Xingwu had given him many pointers. Long Houchen softly said, "Father, I plan to go to the temple tomorrow. Han Yu and Zhang Fangfang will go with me. They also have the qualifications to enter the temple." Long Xingwu slightly trembled and said, "So urgent?" Long Houchen nodded and said, "We urgently need the throne of God to increase our strength. My mount companion is about to evolve. This is also very likely to be its last evolution. It needs me to have enough strength to help it." Long Xingwu said, "Do you need me to dispatch some people from the Knights Templars to help you?" Long Houchen shook his head and said, "There's no need. We can handle it ourselves." He did not want too many people to know about Hao Yue's secret. Even if it was Yang Wenzhao and Duan Yi, he had to think twice before deciding to let them participate. He trusted Hao Yue, but he did not want others to see the horror of Hao Yue's world and suspect Hao Yue. Moreover, it was extremely dangerous to help Hao Yue complete this last evolution. If something went wrong, his life would be in danger. Long Houchen did not want to involve too much. Long Xingwu thought for a moment and said, "Houchen, I know that your talent is the best among the Knights Templars in thousands of years. I am also very clear about your goal. However, remember, if it is impossible, don't force yourself. Any throne of God can give you enough strength. You don't have to be obsessed with the eternal and creative throne of God." Long Houchen said, "Dad, I will not retreat. I also believe that I have this ability. If even I cannot succeed, then I am afraid that the eternal and creative throne of God will never find its master." Long Houchen said this with a smile. His calm words were filled with unparalleled confidence. Yes, if his God of Light constitution could not obtain the approval of the eternal and creative throne of God, then it could only prove that the original throne of God was not pure light. Light flickered in Long Xingyu's eyes as he said, "Good, you are indeed worthy of being my son. Daddy wishes you success." Long Houchen smiled and said, Please also arrange for Yang Wenjiao and Duan Yi to take the night on a golden pedestal test. It is a pity that even if they break through to the 9th rank, there may not be a throne of God for them to choose from. Once Long Haochen, Han Yu, and Zhang Fangfang were all successful, then the 6th throne of God of the Knights Templars would have their own masters for the first time in history. If this really happened, then it would be an unimaginable boost to the morale of humanity in the fight against the demons. Long Xingwu smiled and said, "You don't have to worry about this. When all of you have grown up, our throne of God will eventually be passed down. You must be tired from the journey back. Rest early. I have already arranged a room for you." What surprised Long Haochen was that Long Xingwu had indeed arranged a place for him and Kai. However, there was only one room. Ever since Kai lost her memory, the two of them had not stayed together. One reason was that Kai had lost her memory at that time, and the other was that they were both old and no longer teenagers. Before they were officially married, Long Haochen was afraid that he would not be able to control himself. The room was very big and very comfortable. However, when Long Haochen and Kai stood in the room and looked at each other, they could not help but blush, especially when they saw the only king-sized bed. It was obvious that Long Xingwu and Bai Yu both thought that they had already broken through that boundary after being together for more than 10 years. Moreover, they were about to prepare for their marriage, so it was normal for them to stay together. Kai lowered her head and walked to Long Haochen's side. She gently helped him take off his coat and hung it aside. She whispered, "I'll go wash up." Listening to her soft voice, Long Haochen suddenly had a strange feeling in his heart. He scratched his head but did not say anything. They had such a deep relationship for so many years, and they had gone through countless life and death situations. Their feelings had long reached the point where they were in perfect harmony. Although the situation was a little awkward, there was no need to explain anything. The two of them finished washing up and washing away their fatigue. Long Haochen sat on the edge of the bed in a daze. For Long Haochen, being in a daze was definitely a kind of happiness. It was very comfortable to sit there quietly without thinking about anything. Especially when there was a strange feeling flowing in his heart, it made him immersed in an indescribable happiness. Kai changed into a long silk nightgown. Her fair arms were exposed. She came to Long Haochen's side and naturally sat on his thighs. She wrapped her arms around his neck and pressed her delicate body against his. Long Haochen subconsciously wrapped his arms around her slender waist. He felt Kai's long legs and buttocks pressed against his body. Long Haochen only felt his heart of eternity beating faster and faster. Even the spiritual power in his body became a little more intense. Most of Kai's face was covered by her long hair. He couldn't see her expression, but her breath was very warm. It constantly invaded the sensitive parts of Long Haochen's neck. Her body also became hotter and hotter. Hugging her was like hugging a soft stove. It was burning the fire in Long Haochen's heart even more vigorously. He gently lifted her long hair, revealing Kai's slightly pink and delicate face. Long Haochen gently kissed her soft and delicate cheek. A faint fragrance seeped into his heart and the soft and delicate touch teased his heartstrings. Kai Long Haochen called softly. Kai seemed unwilling to speak and only responded softly. Holding her jade hand, Long Haochen resisted the impulse in his heart and said, "Look at me, okay?" Kai used her head to lightly push against his chest, as if in protest. But she still opened her eyes. Her light purple eyes were slightly hazy. Her long eyelashes curled up in an extremely beautiful arc. Her big eyes were like water, as if they could speak. "That year, when we first arrived at the Exorcist Mountain Pass, you created a small home for us. At that time, I promised you that I would definitely give you a warm home. Although Mom and Dad have already arranged a marriage for us today, I have never formally proposed to you. I won't let you suffer even the slightest grievance. I want you to become the happiest person in the world." While speaking, Long Houchen's handsome face slightly blushed. His eyes also became hazy. He used his lips to lightly touch her long eyelashes. Fool, as early as when I put the forget-me-not ring on your finger, I had already given myself to you. As long as I can be with you, what grievance is there to be wronged about? The future journey against the demons is long and endless. I don't want to wait any longer. I'm afraid that when I get old, I won't be able to give you my most beautiful moment. Kai Er's voice was very soft. She was practically sticking to Long Houchen's ear as she said these words. Her soft and gentle voice carried a faint fragrance that constantly invaded Long Houchen's heart. Long Houchen held Kai Er's waist with one hand and used the other to pull up her soft long hair, presenting her flawless white and exquisite face in front of him. Their 4 eyes met. Their hearts seemed to be immersed in the reflection of each other's eyes. Lowering his head, Long Houchen lightly touched Kai Er's somewhat cold lips. There was a trace of smoothness in the softness, and there was also a slight tremble. It was just a simple touch, but in the next moment, Long Houchen was completely unable to extricate himself. They had been together for more than 10 years, through fire and water, and experienced countless things that ordinary people could not imagine. Especially after Long Houchen died in battle in the Star Demon Tower, and after Kai almost sacrificed her life in the Tower of Eternity to resurrect Long Houchen, they were no longer 2 people, but a whole with 2 hearts. They hugged each other tightly and kissed each other lightly. At this moment, there was only satisfaction left in their hearts. Many years of love finally had a quiet time to bloom into the most beautiful flower. They had such a tacit understanding, whether it was body, mind, or soul. At this moment, they had already completely devoted themselves to each other. Long Houchen brought Kai Er's delicate body down onto the bed, their lips connected from beginning to end. Long Houchen's scorching hot big hands, under Kai Er's slight trembling, moved along the enchanting curves of her nightgown, sticking to her perfectly straight, slender, and even more so warm jade-like long legs. The warmth, accompanied by a trace of numbness, made Kai Er's heart beat faster and faster, but she did not show any signs of resistance. She only tightly wrapped her arms around her man's neck, completely pressing her full of love and attachment into his heart. When the scene of Kai fusing with the spiritual stove appeared in front of Long Houchen in the dream temple, everything happened so naturally. Soft whispers, soft whimpers, their love once again sublimated as they fused with each other. Long Houchen and Kai were inexperienced, but the primitive desires and instincts of humans pushed them to fuse with each other. Light pain and even more love rose from this fusion, and the perfect combination of spirit and desire finally made the last thin layer of barrier between them, which had already been calling out for a long time, completely open. All of this seemed to have happened suddenly, but it was so natural. The inexperience gradually turned into exploration, and they became more and more skilled. They both had physiques that far surpassed ordinary people, which made the love in their hearts even more frantically released. Early in the morning, when the first ray of sunlight shone through the window in the dragon-resisting mountain pass, Long Houchen slowly woke up from his dreams. His consciousness was still a bit hazy, but the next moment he was stunned by the beautiful scenery in front of him. The gentle light of the morning sun shone on Kai Er's slender jade legs, reflecting a sparkling and translucent luster. Her delicate skin was even more lustrous than jade, and it was suffused with a faint layer of pink, as if the aftertaste of last night had not yet faded. Kai slept very sweetly, a faint smile still hanging on her beautiful face. A tear of happiness playfully hung on her delicate cheek, causing Long Houchen to be unable to help but gently kiss it. He gently hugged her, for fear that he would wake her up. Last night's happiness even made Long Houchen feel as if his soul had been purified, making his heart that was as bright as gold even more boundless vitality. A man who had never had a woman would never be complete. Now they were already a true man and woman. Long Houchen looked at Kai, the light in his eyes becoming more and more gentle, as if no matter how long he stared at her, he still could not get enough. Perhaps it was because she could feel the warmth of Long Houchen's embrace. Kai gently leaned against him, making their bodies even closer. After she had transformed from a girl to a woman, the orchid-like fragrance on her body seemed to have become even more rich, causing Long Houchen to almost lose control. But when he thought of her soft cries of pain last night, Long Houchen still held back, only lightly caressing her silky back. Every time his hand swept past the astonishing and enchanting arc between her waist and bottom, he couldn't help but sigh at the Creator's perfect creation. At this moment, he really wanted nothing more than to melt her in his arms, to watch her like this forever, and love her dearly. Lyra's hand had already wrapped around Long Houchen at some point. Her lazy and bashful voice softly rang out, "Go, they should be waiting for you. I'll wait here for your triumphant return. No matter what kind of test it is, you must remember that I'm waiting for you, waiting for your return. To me, only you are the most important person." Long Houchen tightened his arms and softly laughed. "Then when I come back, let's do it like last night, okay?" Kai didn't make a sound, but used her small hand to pinch the soft flesh on Long Houchen's waist. But in the end, she couldn't bear to use force, and only pulled over the quilt at the side, covering her head with it. Long Houchen's face was full of a blissful smile. He patted the quilt lightly, and couldn't help but lightly pinch her perky bottom. Only then did he wrap her in the quilt, and gently said, "When I come back, your man will definitely become a Knight of the Seal." An hour later, when Long Houchen appeared in the main hall of the Knights Templars, Han Yu and Zhang Fangfang were already waiting there, and so was Long Xingwu. Seeing Long Houchen, the three of them were slightly stunned, because they were surprised to find that Long Houchen's essence, qi, and spirit seemed to have taken a qualitative leap. Even his temperament had undergone a complete change. Originally, he was just pure light, but now there was an indescribable aura of life. His essence, qi, and spirit had also reached the peak, especially his eyes, which looked even more simple and gentle. They all had a feeling that Long Houchen's cultivation had reached a higher level overnight, but they didn't understand how this magic trick had changed. Kai, who had changed into a light purple dress, sat by the window. It was snowing outside, and snowflakes fluttered down from the sky. Those that landed on the window were slowly melting. There was a faint smile on the corner of her mouth. Her heart was very happy and calm. In fact, she knew very well that if she hadn't taken the initiative, Long Houchen definitely wouldn't have taken her at this time. However, she had chosen this moment to do it. The power of purification could purify all impurities. As the favored one of the Grim Reaper, she had chosen to become one with him at this time, in order to further purify everything about him, and give him the deepest love. Purification and light were originally a perfect combination. Her domain and Long Houchen's domain were existences that complemented each other. The two of them had broken through the last line of defense, which meant that their auras and domains had completely fused together. Kai had completely given herself to her man, allowing him to reach an unprecedented peak. Last night, Long Houchen's heart was filled with endless love. It wasn't until this morning when he felt the changes in his body that he understood Kai's painstaking efforts. However, he didn't say anything. With their tacit understanding, there was no need to say anything. Similarly, after being nourished by Long Houchen's pure light, the current Kai was glowing. She could feel the sublimation of her power of purification. Suddenly, Kai giggled and muttered to herself, "Shouldn't we have long ago? Are you all ready?" Looking at the three young people in front of him, Long Xingwu asked in a deep voice. The three of them bowed to Long Xingwu at the same time and said, "Sir Knight of the Seal, we are ready." Even though Long Houchen was the president of the Federation, at the moment when he was about to challenge the Knight of the Seal, he only regarded himself as an ordinary Knights Templars knight. Long Xingwu nodded and said, Any holy knight who challenges the recognition of the throne of God is a big deal. You will only have one more chance to challenge the throne of God for every rank you advance. You should have seen how many Holy Knight Templars there are in the Temple Tournament. However, there are only 3 of us Knight of the Seal. The process of the challenge can only be experienced by you yourselves because everyone's experience is different. Even if it's the same person challenging the throne of God twice, it will be completely different. I can only teach you one thing: be firm in your belief and move forward bravely. After saying this, Long Xingwu suddenly stood up and a monstrous aura suddenly burst out from his body. Compared to Long Tianyin and Yang Haoan, although the 3 of them were Knight of the Seal, in terms of combat strength, Long Xingwu was actually the strongest among the 3 Knight of the Seal. This was because he was the Punishment Knight, and also the owner of the Doomsday and Massacre Throne of God that focused on attack. Follow me. Long Xingwu led Long Haochen and the other 2 straight into the depths of the hall. There were 6 sculptures of the Throne of God. Yes, they were just sculptures. But even so, when the 3 of them walked in front of the 6th Throne of God, they couldn't help but feel a strange feeling. Chapter 259. Facing the 6 statues of the Throne of God, Long Haochen's gaze fell on the one in the center. Compared to the other Throne of God, it seemed to be the least dazzling one. It was pitch black, and its tall back was simple and steady. It gave off a faint sense of grandeur. The sun, moon, stars, flowers, birds, fish, insects, and all kinds of plants were engraved on its back. They looked fine, but also somewhat messy. Coupled with the black background, it seemed to be the least eye-catching one. However, it was surrounded by 5 other dazzling Throne of God. The one that left the deepest impression on Long Haochen was naturally his father's Throne of God of Doomsday and Massacre. The high back of the backrest was inlaid with countless gems, and one could vaguely see a portrait of a person on the back of the backrest. It was fierce, dignified, and could even be said to be a terrifying pressure spreading out from it. At the top of the backrest was a bright red semicircular gem that looked like a half-sun overlooking the earth. However, its light was a slightly dusky orange-red, and it emitted a terrifying pressure as if the end of the world had come. On the chest of the statue, which was above the back of the throne, the most eye-catching thing was a golden-red diamond-shaped gem. Every ridge on it was so sharp, and most of the bright light came from it. On the wide throne, on the left and right sides were 2 lion-like carvings, crawling there and roaring. Countless magnificent patterns seemed to flow down from the back of the throne, covering the throne. This statue was exactly the same as Long Xingwu's Throne of God, just smaller. Looking at it, Long Haochen couldn't help but be slightly dazed. But even such a dazzling Throne of God of Doomsday and Massacre could only serve as a foil to the pitch-black Throne of God in the center. Not only that, around the black Throne of God, there were 4 other Throne of God. The Throne of God of Fear and Sorrow, the Throne of God of Protection and Mercy, the Throne of God of Wisdom and Spirit, and the Throne of God of Order and Law. Each of the 5 Throne of God was so magnificent and dazzling, but they could only surround the inconspicuous and most unattractive Throne of God in the center. Set off by them, the pitch-black Throne of God had a supreme majesty and mystery. It was like a black hole, attracting Long Haochen's attention. Han Yu, Zhang Fangfang, and Long Haochen were in a similar situation. Each of their gazes fell on a Throne of God, and their expressions were also dull. Long Xingwu stood at the side and didn't disturb them. As someone who had been through this, he was very clear that any holy knight who came here would be attracted by the sculptures of the Throne of God, and the first Throne of God that attracted their attention would become their target. Of course, the sculpture of the Throne of God that was no longer here wouldn't be attractive at all. It really is the Throne of God of eternity and creation. When Long Xingwu saw his son's gaze attracted by the pitch-black Throne of God, he couldn't help but sigh in his heart. Ever since the establishment of the Knights Templars in the Dark Age, Only 5 people were qualified to challenge the throne of God of eternity and creation, and all of them failed without exception. The most recent one was the Holy Knight of Stars, Yang Haoyu's challenge. The fact that they were qualified to challenge the throne of God was proof of their talent and ability. And Long Haochen would be the 6th person to challenge this glory. Could he succeed? Long Xingwu's heart couldn't help but tighten. Long Haochen and the other 2 stayed in a daze for a full hour. Gradually, they could see the aura of light rising around them, and the 3 throne of God were also shining with a faint brilliance. The throne of God of eternity and creation that Long Haochen was facing was glowing with a soft, faint white light, which was also the weakest. A faint connection began to appear in the depths of Long Haochen's soul. A wonderful feeling spread in his heart, as if something was calling his name. Long Haochen stood there quietly, silently sensing the change in the aura. The first thing he felt was calmness. Yes, incomparable calmness, a calmness without any fluctuation of emotions. It was as if it was not sad, happy, or angry at Long Haochen's challenge. It was just quietly connecting with him. Then, what Long Haochen felt was vastness, boundless vastness. This feeling could only be compared to when he saw Kai Er standing on the path to heaven in the Tower of Eternity and the endless night sky around her. However, the starry sky had its limits, and this aura from the throne of God of eternity and creation seemed to have no limit. Suddenly, a golden light shone from the throne of God of fear and sorrow. It gently swept across the front, and the next moment, Han Yu's body disappeared. These 6 sculptures of the throne of God were projections of the real throne of God. Only by gaining their approval could one begin the assessment process. Some holy knight were even eliminated before they had the chance to take the assessment. As soon as Han Yu disappeared, another golden light flashed. This time, it was from the throne of God of wisdom and spirit. Zhang Fangfang's body also disappeared. Only Long Haochen was still standing there, silently sensing the aura from the throne of God of eternity and creation. Long Xingwu stood at the side and frowned. He knew very well that the sooner he qualified for the assessment of the throne of God, the better his compatibility with the throne of God would be. Han Yu and Zhang Fangfang's speed was almost the same as his when he was young. In other words, they still had a good chance of gaining the approval of the throne of God. However, why was Long Haochen, who had the highest level of cultivation and the constitution of the God of Light, still unable to begin his assessment? Could it be that the throne of God of eternity and creation did not approve of him? Long Haochen was completely immersed in his own world. He could feel that the calm power was combining with his aura. However, strangely, it seemed to be rejecting something. A very uncomfortable feeling began to appear in Long Haochen's body. An illusion began to appear in Long Haochen's mind. It was a boundless white world. In this white world, there was a dazzling golden light. This golden light was compatible with the surrounding white as if it could fuse into one at any time. However, there were 2 other colors within this ball of golden light. One of them was very familiar to Long Haochen. It was purplish gold, the purplish gold color that belonged to the bright moon. This purplish gold color was clashing with the boundless white light, not giving way at all. Despite the vastness of the white light, the purplish gold light gave off a feeling of superiority. In terms of aura, neither could suppress the other. They could only collide continuously. This was Haoyue's power. Was the throne of God of eternity and creation repelling Haoyue's power? Long Haochen was secretly shocked. If that was the case, what choice should he make? In his heart, Long Haochen began to struggle. Haoyue was his partner, a partner of the blood contract. Giving up on Haoyue would even lead to its death. Moreover, Long Haochen was determined to get the throne of God. As the Federation president and the most talented knight in the history of the Knights Templars, if he couldn't get the recognition of the throne of God, his growth in strength and reputation in the Federation would be greatly affected. Between the 2, how should he choose? Moreover, it wasn't just the purplish gold light that was repelled. There was also a dark golden light that appeared in the golden light. Compared to the purplish gold light, the dark golden light was much more low-key. However, it was also stubbornly connected to the golden light that represented Long Houchen. Moreover, it seemed to be much stronger than the purplish gold light. The purplish gold light that represented Haoyue was the fusion of his bloodline with it. It was the power of his bloodline. However, what was this dark golden light? If it was also the power of his bloodline, when did he possess such power? The dark golden light didn't represent darkness, but it also had an extremely strong sense of power. Moreover, this sense of power mainly appeared in the depths of Long Houchen's soul. In other words, this dark golden power was closely related to his soul power. Long Houchen was never an indecisive person. After a short moment of consideration, he had already made his choice. He chose Haoyue. If he had to make a choice between the eternal and creative throne of God and Haoyue, he would choose the latter. Haoyue wasn't just his mount companion. In Long Houchen's heart, Haoyue was also his good brother. On the other hand, even if the eternal and creative throne of God was a supreme artifact, it was still just an artifact. Long Houchen felt that it wasn't difficult to choose between his brother and the artifact. Even if he couldn't obtain the throne of God, he would never abandon Haoyue. For more than a decade, he had witnessed Haoyue's growth and lost count of how many times Haoyue had saved him from danger. They relied on each other and helped each other to achieve what they had today. Haoyue was his good brother and companion. No matter what the situation was, Long Houchen would never abandon him. The determination of his conviction immediately caused the situation in the illusion to change. The purplish golden light was very powerful. Although it couldn't be compared to the white light, it was more noble and arrogant. Even the dark golden light was supporting it. This dark golden light seemed to be Long Houchen's own consciousness. It didn't have its own characteristics. Under Long Houchen's determination, it became especially tenacious and supported Haoyue from the side to resist the white light. What should have been a harmonious situation had now become a confrontation. It seemed that Long Houchen was getting further and further away from the eternal and creative throne of God. Long Xingwu's anxiety was getting stronger. 4 hours had passed, but Long Houchen's test still hadn't started. It had been so long. Even if it started now, it would probably be in an instant. Long Xingwu's heart was in turmoil. Besides, he also noticed that the white light emitted by the sculpture of the eternal and creative throne of God was getting stronger and stronger. However, it was vaguely invasive. On the other hand, 9 purplish golden light patterns appeared on Long Houchen's forehead. There was a vague destructive aura as if it was going against the eternal and creative throne of God. Houchen, oh Houchen, what are you doing? However, no matter how anxious Long Xingwu was, he couldn't help at all. He could only rely on himself to obtain the recognition of the throne of God, so he could only watch anxiously. Time passed quickly. In the blink of an eye, it was already a day. He didn't know how Han Yu and Zhang Fangfang's test would go, but Long Xingwu was very confident in them. Contrary to the test before, the longer they took the test in the space created by the throne of God, the higher their chances of success. As for Long Houchen, he probably didn't stand a chance anymore. In fact, Long Xingwu had already given up. As time passed, the purplish golden light emitted from Long Houchen's forehead and the aura of the eternal and creative throne of God became stronger. Although he was very surprised that the purplish golden light could fight against the eternal and creative throne of God, it also meant that Long Houchen was standing on the opposite side of the throne of God. How could he get its recognition? Long Houchen's eternal heart was beating gently, and the aura of light emitted from his body was so pure that even Long Xingwu, who was standing next to him, was affected. His heart was constantly producing a feeling of enlightenment. However, he was currently nervous and didn't have the slightest intention of grasping this enlightenment. If it didn't work, then it was time to end it. When Long Houchen broke through the second level of the 9th rank and entered the third level of the 9th rank, there should be a chance. Long Xingwu sighed. He didn't know why Long Houchen was so persistent in supporting the purplish golden light. Based on his previous experience, if Long Houchen was willing to give up the power represented by the purplish golden light, then the power of the throne of God would expel it, and Long Houchen's test should have begun long ago. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. Long Houchen still didn't move, still fighting against the aura of the eternal and creative throne of God. Fortunately, it was only the aura and the will, not the spiritual power. Otherwise, according to the legend of the eternal and creative throne of God, although Long Houchen's cultivation wasn't low, he probably wouldn't be able to resist in front of it. Long Houchen felt different. These 3 days didn't pass in vain for him. In the illusory space, he only felt that his soul seemed to be constantly sublimated in this fight. The dark golden light was also constantly melting in the fight, combining with his own golden color. This feeling was very wonderful, just like the sublimation of light when he was awakened as a favored one, but without the feeling of connection with the goddess of light. Long Houchen knew that perhaps he couldn't get the recognition of the throne of God, but his soul had evolved. No one had ever studied the cultivation method of soul power. Chapter 260. The power of the divine throne of eternity and creation was vast, vast, and all-encompassing. It was also extremely majestic. Long Houchen's divine light physique had attracted its emotions, and that was why they had fused and probed each other. This was also the preliminary test that the throne of God of eternity and creation had given him. However, things did not go as planned. No one had expected that Haoyue and Long Houchen would be affected by the dark gold color of Haoyue's body. Long Houchen's confidence remained unchanged, but the perception of the throne of God of eternity and creation seemed to be constantly changing. In the beginning, the throne of God of eternity and creation had completely suppressed and devoured Long Houchen's will, as if it wanted to remove all impurities in Long Houchen's body except for the light. However, as time passed, this will was quietly changing, and even Long Houchen himself did not notice it. In the face of the vast majesty of the throne of God of eternity and creation, Haoyue did not flinch at all. No matter how the vast power attacked, Haoyue held his proud head high, noble, cold, and filled with terrifying destructiveness. Both sides confronted each other, and in terms of will, no one could do anything to the other. If anyone knew the origin of the throne of God of eternity and creation, and knew the situation before them, they would definitely be shocked beyond words. This pure collision of will meant a collision of levels, as if they were verifying each other's identity as nobles. Even Long Houchen's divine light physique would be completely suppressed when facing the throne of God of eternity and creation, to the extent that the dark gold power in his body gradually disappeared as it fused with his soul. This was the huge difference in levels. However, Haoyue was different. In terms of level, Haoyue's power was not inferior to that of the throne of God of eternity and creation, and he did not lose the upper hand in the battle. However, he also could not do anything to the will of the throne of God of eternity and creation. The battle gradually turned into a compromise. Haoyue's purplish gold light gradually shrank back into the golden light of Long Houchen's main body, and the white light of the throne of God of eternity and creation stopped pursuing. The heart of eternity pulsed with Long Houchen's heart of eternity. At this moment, this heart of eternity had silently turned purplish gold. This meant that the power of Long Houchen's bloodline that belonged to Haoyue had completely fused with his heart of eternity. As the heart of eternity pulsed, this power could be transferred back to him at any time. A soft white gradually covered Long Houchen's entire body. When his confrontation with the throne of God of eternity and creation lasted until the 4th day, finally, with a flash of white light, Long Houchen's body disappeared without a trace. Long Xingwu had completely given up hope. The sudden disappearance of Long Houchen even shocked him. 4 days of waiting made him very tired. His body swayed slightly, and his eyes became focused. Could Long Houchen succeed? It took him a full 4 days to enter the test. Among the holy knight who could take the test from the throne of God, he was the first in the thousands of years of history of the Knights Templars. Before him, all those who took more than 1 day to enter the test failed without exception. Long Xingwu took a deep breath and sighed in his heart. "Child, I wish you success." He knew very well that if Long Houchen failed to obtain the recognition of the throne of God of eternity and creation, it would be a huge blow to him. He was now the president of the Federation, but he was still so young. If he wanted to gain the recognition of more people, he had to continue to show his strength. The Knight of the Seal was undoubtedly one of the best ways to convince people. If he failed, it would mean that his talent and ability hadn't been recognized by the throne of God, which would naturally cause many people to doubt him. No matter how worried Long Xingwu was, the only thing he could do now was to pray. The test from the throne of God of eternity and creation had once caused the Holy Knight of Stars, Yang Haoyu, to fail. Whether Long Houchen could succeed or not depended on himself. The moment the white light from the throne of God of eternity and creation swept away Long Houchen, it was also the moment when Long Houchen woke up from the illusion. The pressure from before had completely disappeared. He only felt that his body was soaked in warm water. It was indescribably comfortable. His tempered soul had obtained the best rest. It was a wonderful feeling, as if his body was melting. His soul had even fallen into a temporary blank and deep sleep. After an unknown period of time, everything around him became clear again. The feeling of having his feet on the ground made Long Houchen, who was immersed in the comfortable feeling, wake up. The clear chirping of insects and birds entered his ears. Long Houchen's consciousness also gradually recovered. He was surprised to find that he was in a forest, surrounded by tall trees. There were also many shrubs that were almost as tall as a human under the trees, blocking his vision. "What is this place?" Long Houchen looked around doubtfully. The comfort of his body had kept his cultivation at its peak. The improvement of his soul had also greatly enhanced his senses. There was a rich breath of life around him. There was no sense of threat at all. Everything was the most primitive nature. The vast breath of life was gently surging in his senses. Long Houchen's will was very strong. Naturally, he would not lose himself because of the sudden change of environment. After observing his surroundings calmly for a moment, his emotions also returned to normal. With a flash of golden light, the 6 wings on his back spread out. At the same time, he also tried to communicate with Haoyu. There was no problem. He could communicate with Haoyu. However, to his surprise, Haoyu actually rejected his call for the first time. Moreover, Haoyu sent him a cheering emotion through his mind. Is it encouraging me to accept the challenge alone? What is the test of the throne of God of eternity and creation? In this pure nature, at least for now, Long Houchen did not have a single clue. Since that was the case, he would just have to find a clue. Thinking of this, the 6 wings on his back flapped gently. His body floated up, flew over the treetops in an instant and rose into the sky. Flying out of the lush treetops, Long Houchen was shocked. The scenery in front of him was really too beautiful. Looking into the distance, there was only greenery as far as his eyes could see. Those towering trees that had grown for God knows how many years covered the entire ground. There was not a single soil or rock. Only endless plants extended into the distance. The feeling of vastness was no less than the shock of seeing the sea. Long Houchen flapped his wings and flew forward gently. He did not fly very fast. At the same time, he also spread out his senses to feel everything below him. Since the throne of God of eternity and creation allowed him to enter this place, then his test should have already begun. He did not know if he could complete this test. What he knew was that he would do his best. As he flew forward, suddenly, a scream appeared in his senses. With Long Houchen's current cultivation, even the slightest movement within 100 miles would not be able to escape his detection. That scream sounded like a human's voice, and it was made in the process of extreme fear. The 6 wings on Long Houchen's back flapped subconsciously. His flying speed was already terrifying to begin with, and with the addition of lightspeed flash, he traversed tens of li in the blink of an eye, accurately locating the source of the scream. Just as he was about to reach his target, he saw a white silhouette rushing out from the treetops below, flying in his direction. Before Long Houchen could clearly see what that white silhouette was, a huge figure had already rushed out from the treetops. Countless branches and leaves scattered in the air, and a terrifying pressure was exerted on Long Houchen, making him feel as though he was about to suffocate. What kind of monster was that? Only its upper body was out of the treetops, but it had already covered all the light in front of Long Houchen. It looked like a small mountain had suddenly come out of the thicket. Its thick arms were probably as thick as a water tank, and its huge fists were clenched into fists that were comparable to the stone hammers of engineering vehicles. It was this pair of huge palms that directly smashed towards the white figure in front of it. It looked like the white figure was about to be smashed by this pair of huge palms. It was also at this moment that everything in the surroundings suddenly stopped. Even the white figure that had soared into the sky and the terrifying magical beast that was chasing after it also stopped in midair. An emotionless voice sounded in Long Houchen's mind. The assessment has begun. Rescue the human female Cece and protect her. If Cece dies, the mission will be failed, and the assessment will end. The voice appeared very quickly. At the same time, Long Houchen also took the opportunity to see that it was a woman in white who had just rushed in front of him. At this moment, her long black hair was very messy, and her eyes were filled with fear. However, it still could not conceal her stunning beauty. She looked like she was in her 20s, and her eyebrows and eyes were actually somewhat similar to Kair's. As soon as the voice ended, everything in the surroundings suddenly moved again. The girl in white, Cece, instantly swept past Long Houchen, and the pair of extremely terrifying huge palms directly smashed towards him. Long Houchen was the first to bear the brunt of it. In the face of such a situation, Long Houchen did not panic at all. The assessment of the throne of God of eternity and creation had indeed begun. Although it was somewhat different from what Yang Haoyu, the Holy Star Knight, had described, the overall situation was somewhat similar. Back in the Holy City, Yang Haoyu had specifically told him about the assessment of the eternal and creation throne of God. Yang Haoyu had told him that the assessment was not a simple battle, but a series of assessments. First, it was to recognize the Holy Knight's eligibility for the assessment. Only those who were recognized by the throne of God of eternity and creation could enter the world that belonged to it for the assessment. The content of the assessment would be a series of tasks. Only by completing all the tasks could one be recognized by the throne of God of eternity and creation. As for what the tasks were, according to the records of the ancestors of the Knights Templars and Yang Haoyu's own experience, the situation of each assessment was different. However, it was undeniable that the assessment would be a chain of tasks, one after another. There was no room for error, or one would be completely disqualified from the assessment and be sent out. All of Yang Haoyu's assessments had ended in failure. His warning to Long Houchen was that the most difficult part of the assessment of the throne of God of eternity and creation was not the assessment of one's strength, but the assessment of one's heart and humanity. He had failed in this aspect twice. The last time, which was also the time when he was the closest to success, was eventually told by the vessel soul of the throne of God of eternity and creation that his light was not pure enough, and had been mixed with too many other emotions. Hence, it rejected him forever. The so-called other emotions referred to the divine beast of starry sky. At that time, Yang Haoyu thought about it again and again. In the end, he still did not choose to give up on the divine beast of starry sky. It was not only because of the relationship between him and the divine beast of starry sky, but also because even if he gave up on the divine beast of starry sky, it might still be difficult for him to complete the final assessment. What he told Long Houchen was to learn from his lesson. At the beginning of the assessment, he should not compromise, and he must persist in everything that he had. At that time, perhaps he was not persistent enough, because after he was rejected, the vessel soul of the throne of God of eternity and creation told him that if he did not even have the conviction to persist in, how could he obtain approval and compromise? This was also why Long Houchen did not make any moves during the 4 days. No matter how much pressure the throne of God of eternity and creation exerted on him, he remained unmoved. He only persisted in his persistence. As expected, the one who finally compromised was actually the throne of God. Even though Long Houchen compromised in a certain way, the final assessment still started because of the power of Haoyue's bloodline in Long Houchen's body. This meant that the throne of God did not need a pure body to inherit it. These thoughts only flashed across Long Houchen's mind for a moment. A layer of 7-colored golden light suddenly spread in front of Long Houchen. The golden light rapidly expanded into a huge light screen, blocking the attack of the pair of giant palms. With a loud bang, Long Houchen felt as if he had been smashed by a mountain. His body flew backward in the air. Although he was not injured, his heart of eternity was beating at least 3 times faster than before. In the process of retreating, he reached out with his right hand and wrapped it around the waist of the girl who had just passed by him. As the girl screamed, he pulled her back with him. At the same time, their bodies directly fell into the forest below. This was because the huge figure had completely emerged from the treetop. Seeing its appearance, Long Houchen knew that it was not wise to fight it in the air. It was a monster that looked like an orangutan, but it had a pair of huge wings on its back. Its thick body was definitely more than 20 meters tall, and its shoulder width was more than 10 meters. This was also the main reason why it shocked Long Houchen so much. Its terrifyingly thick arms were definitely the best weapon. Its dark golden fur was comparable to an epic armor. A pair of blood-red eyes stared at Long Houchen in the air. 2 rays of blood-red light shot out from the eyes and bombarded towards Long Houchen. The colorful golden light shrunk to a smaller area, protecting Long Houchen and the white-clothed girl Cece. An extreme heat instantly spread out from the light formed by the Sun-Moon Divine Snail Shield. The surrounding treetops were instantly turned into ashes. The strong impact once again greatly consumed Long Houchen's spiritual power, and his body directly fell into the forest. What a powerful strength! The attack of this huge orangutan deeply shocked Long Houchen. He even doubted Yang Haoyu's judgment. Didn't Grandfather Yang say that in the test of the eternal and creator throne of God, the enemy's strength was not too strong? But, this orangutan, from the 2 collisions just now, Long Houchen could clearly confirm that this was not just a level 10 magical beast, but not an ordinary level 10 magical beast. Its attack power was at least 200,000 points of spiritual power. What was more terrifying was its physical strength, which was probably even greater than its own spiritual power. In a flash, Long Houchen had already returned to the forest. The orangutan also fell from the sky, crashing into the forest again. The thick trees were like fragile chopsticks in front of it, one after another. The orangutan clenched its huge fists and smashed directly towards Long Houchen. At the same time, its body also emitted a strong red light, and the strong fire element caused the surrounding air to appear like ripples of water. Long Houchen knew that he could not continue to be passive like this. Otherwise, he could not afford to waste his spiritual power. As he thought about it, he forcefully swung his right hand backward, throwing Cece's body away. He shouted, "You leave here first." Bringing a person into battle would undoubtedly have a great impact on him. As he threw Cece away, he also went straight towards the orangutan's fist. 2 divine swords instantly appeared in Long Houchen's hands. The aria of the goddess of light pointed in the air, and behind Long Houchen, a huge golden light shadow also rose. The god of light had descended. The incomparably fierce sword intent brought with it a shocking rainbow in the air, going straight to the orangutan's wrists. At the same time, blue rain hibiscus of light also pointed forward, and a 3-meter-long golden light sword came out, flying straight towards the orangutan's throat. In terms of the understanding of sword intent, Long Houchen could currently be said to be the first person in the Holy Demon Continent. With the power of sword intent, he did not know how many enemies with cultivation above his own. The horror of sword intent lay in its perfect fusion of soul and power. Especially after Long Houchen's soul had been sublimated, whether it was perception or overall strength, there had been obvious improvements. There was a clanging sound. The sword intent from the aria of the goddess of light accurately hit the orangutan's wrists, but the orangutan's hammering fists still fell, but a painful roar erupted from its mouth. At the same time, 2 red lights shot out from its eyes again, smashing the sword light flying towards it. Long Houchen's figure flashed, and he nimbly avoided the orangutan's fists. However, he still underestimated the orangutan's strength. Amid the loud bang, the orangutan's fists smashed into the ground, and a terrifying earthquake wave instantly hit Long Houchen, causing his body to be thrown out like a small stone. At the same time, the violent shock also caused the spiritual power in Long Houchen's body to stagnate, and his head was momentarily dizzy. It actually had an effect similar to an earthquake wave? Long Houchen was a little confused, but he was also extremely experienced in combat. In his chest, the heart of eternity was beating violently, and he put his hands together, and the 2 divine swords had already merged into one in the air, becoming the sword of life and creation. After the orangutan's fists smashed a deep pit in the ground, its huge body suddenly jumped up, and directly pounced towards Long Houchen. The terrifying flames caused its body to look golden red, and the scorching hot air burned large areas of the surrounding plants into ashes. At this moment, suddenly, an ice-blue water dragon flew over from the side, wrapping around the orangutan's body, and forcibly intercepted it from the air. The water dragon and the flames on the orangutan's body clashed, and white smoke rose. While the orangutan's body was restrained, its angry roars became even more ferocious. Long Houchen was slightly stunned. Although he already had a way to deal with it, this buffer was naturally more advantageous to him. When he turned his head, he saw that the white-clothed girl, Cece, was holding an ice-blue staff in her hand, and was constantly chanting a spell. When she saw him looking over, she gently nodded at him. Long Houchen also nodded at her, and then immediately rushed out. Previously, his sword intent had only left a mark on the orangutan's wrist. The orangutan's fur was its best armor, and its defense was extremely shocking. In terms of overall strength, although the orangutan did not display the power of the domain, its ability could definitely be described as absolutely terrifying. Holding the sword of life and creation with both hands, the golden shadow behind Long Houchen also became brighter, and the rich golden color instantly filled the air and spread to the surroundings. Light God's domain. In terms of absolute strength, the orangutan's physical strength and spiritual power combined were completely above Long Houchen's. Only with the power of the domain could he have a chance to defeat the orangutan. As soon as the light god's domain was displayed, Long Houchen was surprised to find that he seemed to have made great progress in terms of the domain. This progress was reflected in the control of the domain, which was originally a little difficult to control, but now became completely easy, and his perception of all the light elements in the surroundings was much stronger than before. In this world that was full of life, there was no lack of light. Under the influence of the light god's domain, the pure light elements immediately rushed towards Long Houchen like rivers flowing into the sea. A faint smile appeared on Long Houchen's face. As the light god's domain expanded, it directly enveloped Cece and the orangutan. Cece was surprised to find that her spiritual power had instantly become boundless, and the extremely pure light elements actually transformed into the characteristics of water elements that flowed in her body. She did not change the way she cast magic, but she directly turned it into dual-element magic of water and light. Furthermore, she did not have to worry about the lack of spiritual power at all. The orangutan had a completely different feeling. It had lost track of Long Houchen and Cece, and the sticky light elements covered its body. Not only did it feel sluggish, but it was even more horrified to find that the fiery red light on its body had completely dimmed, and even the dark gold that should have been reflected on its fur had disappeared, leaving only black. The absorption of light meant that all the power related to light would be absorbed by the light god's domain. What Long Houchen was displaying at this moment was the most basic ability of the domain, amplification and weakening. Raising the divine sword in his hand slowly, Long Houchen wanted to test exactly how much his domain had improved. A gentle seven-colored light slowly blossomed from the divine sword that had merged into one. When the seven-colored light, which was full of the aura of life, came into contact with Long Houchen's light god's domain, it immediately caused a chain reaction. Back in the temple tournament, Long Houchen had used the evolved ability of the light god's domain during his battle with Yang Haoyu. However, at that time, he had been completely forced to use it by Yang Haoyu, and could not completely control his evolved domain. However, it was completely different this time. Long Houchen was surprised to find that in this natural world that was full of the aura of life, when his domain had completed its evolution, the originally intense golden light had disappeared, leaving only a faint seven-colored luster. However, this seven-colored luster had spread to everything around him. This feeling was very wonderful. All the plants, even the earth and the air, had become extensions of his spirit force and thoughts. He was in control of their lives. Long Houchen's eyes narrowed, and the two trees closest to the gorilla began to grow like crazy. Their bodies were seven-colored, and their thick and powerful branches swept toward the gorilla. After controlling the process of life, Long Houchen's mind trembled. At this moment, he felt like the bottleneck that had been restricting him had suddenly been broken. His suppressed spirit force surged out like a geyser, and the seven-colored golden light around him became intense and solid. Inside the heart of eternity, the spirit core that had been dyed purple gold by Long Haoyue's bloodline began to change violently. In the blink of an eye, it had tripled in size. During the cultivation of spirit cores, everyone had their own methods and encounters, but without exception, as long as the spirit core changed, it meant an increase in the realm. That's right, in this world full of life, after his soul sublimated, Long Houchen had finally broken through to the second rank of the ninth rank and officially entered the third rank of the ninth rank. The power of his domain instantly spread into the distance, and the range it covered had almost doubled after his breakthrough. It was a terrifying ability to control the process of life. The gorilla had already broken 2 trees in its struggle, but it was also completely restrained by the seven-colored golden light. A faint smile appeared on Long Houchen's face as he pointed at the gorilla with his right hand. Suddenly, 2 rays of seven-colored light shot out from his eyes and directly collided into the gorilla's eyes. The gorilla's body trembled violently, and the surrounding seven-colored light swarmed into its body. The gorilla's body continued to tremble, and the golden red light continued to flow out of its body to resist the invasion of the seven-colored light. However, compared to the light god domain that had completed its evolution, the gorilla was still too weak. Only a domain could fight against a domain. Although the gorilla's strength was comparable to a third rank of the ninth rank, its weakness was that it lacked the support of a domain. Without a domain, it didn't have the ability to control the outside world. Pure strength was useless in front of a domain master. The gorilla's struggle became weaker and weaker. Gradually, its body stopped trembling, and the fear in its eyes gradually turned into confusion. Its huge body gradually shrank under the infusion of the seven-colored golden light. From the size of a mountain, it gradually shrank and began to become smaller and smaller. In just a short while, the previously arrogant gorilla had turned into a very small and beautiful gorilla that was less than a meter tall. At this moment, it no longer had the ferocity it had before. Its eyes were filled with helplessness and even a hint of grievance. Yes, this was the power to control the process of life. Long Houchen directly turned it from an adult to a juvenile. Not only did it reduce its age, but it also reduced its strength. Although it could only maintain this form in Long Houchen's domain, it was enough in the process of battle. Against such a small fellow, what threat could it pose to Long Houchen? Long Houchen lowered his right arm. Looking at the sword of life and creation in his hand, he couldn't help but feel a tinge of regret. This divine sword, formed by the fusion of the aria of the goddess of light and the blue rain hibiscus of light, was gradually unable to satisfy his cultivation, especially after he used the power of the purple gold Haoyue sword. He understood that although the sword of life and creation was good, it was after all not a true divine weapon. In a sense, it could only be regarded as an immortal-grade weapon that was closest to a divine weapon. To Long Houchen, such a weapon could no longer support his future advancement. This was also an important reason why he obtained the recognition of the eternal and creation throne of God. From the second rank of the 9th rank to the 3rd rank, Long Houchen had completely completed the first evolution of his domain. In the future, he would no longer need to use the sword of life and creation as a medium to perform this evolution. However, he would treasure this pair of divine swords forever, even if he had a substitute for them in the future. A gentle 7-colored halo carried the white-clothed girl Cece to Long Houchen's side. Cece, who was out of danger, was clearly much calmer. She looked at Long Houchen with eyes full of curiosity. "Hello, thank you for saving my life." Cece bowed respectfully to Long Houchen. Looking at her, she was actually no different from the mages of the Holy Demon Continent. Now that she had calmed down a lot, her irresistible beauty was released even more. Kai was already an exceptional beauty, and compared to her, Cece wasn't the least bit inferior in terms of appearance. Moreover, she seemed to be brimming with life, which was extremely compatible with Long Houchen's evolved light god domain, to the extent that the amplification she received from it was also enormous. From the previous attack of Cece, Long Houchen could feel that she was a 8th rank mage. A 8th rank mage who looked about 20 years old must be a genius among geniuses in the Holy Demon Continent. "Hello, I just happened to be at the right time. Why did this gorilla want to kill you?" Long Houchen asked doubtfully. Hearing his question, sadness immediately appeared in Cece's eyes. Tears flowed uncontrollably from her eyes. A pear blossom of a pear blossom in the rain was such a moving scene. Even with Long Houchen's strong willpower, he could not help but tremble slightly. He subconsciously turned his head away, not daring to look at Cece's beautiful face any longer. "It is the pet of a devil. That devil killed my people, kidnapped my family, and it came to kill me. If I hadn't met you, I'm afraid I would have," Long Houchen said doubtfully. "Devil? What devil?" Cece took a deep breath and said sorrowfully, "He is a powerful mage. In Easton, almost no one is his match. He has supreme authority here, and all the races must listen to his orders. I accidentally discovered a treasure, and for some reason, he found out. He sent people to demand it from my people, but that treasure can change the future of my people." The chief rejected him flatly. A few days later, his army came to my home. He didn't even give us a chance to compromise before he started a cruel massacre. When I escaped, I saw my father, mother, and brother being captured by his people. It turned out that this was a world called Easton. Easton's meaning was equivalent to the humans' green ocean. Here lived two major races, humans and elves. The demon that Cece was talking about was the Lord of Easton, also known as the King of Easton. He was a half-elf with both human and elven bloodlines. He controlled extremely powerful natural magic and was the strongest person in the world of Easton. The king of Easton was like the king of this world. He didn't have an army, but his power was like the king of the forest, making all the races submit to him. Anyone who went against his will was eventually killed by him. His life seemed to be endless. He had ruled this world for 3,000 years. Cece didn't say what treasure she had obtained. In her eyes, Long Houchen could even see some wariness. Then what should we do with this gorilla? Long Houchen asked Cece. Cece hesitated for a moment. It is the servant of the king of Easton, and also his loyal dog. Countless humans and elves have died in its hand. However, we know a tribe love peace and don't want to kill. It would be great if it could stay weak forever. At least it wouldn't have to pay with its life. Long Houchen frowned slightly. He thought for a moment and said, "I can try." As he spoke, he slowly raised his right hand and silently sensed everything in the light god territory around him. A gentle seven-colored radiance began to condense in his palm. The power that was filled with vitality gradually turned into a small seven-colored vortex in Long Houchen's hand. Exhaustion appeared on Long Houchen's face. Not only was he condensing his own power, but he was also refining the profound meaning that belonged to the process of life. If it wasn't for the great evolution of his soul power, he wouldn't have been able to do all this. The rainbow light flashed, and the small vortex flew up, falling towards the shrunken gorilla.